Thursday, January 2nd, Jocks 94.5. Glad you're with us. Cole Cubelic, Greg McElroy, live in New Orleans. And the last 24 hours has been something different for us. We had college football playoff games yesterday. We're going to get to those. We're going to break those down. We have a college football playoff game today as well as other college football games today. Going to break it all down for you, talk to all of those. But I thought first we would take you a little bit through our day yesterday since we were here on the ground. And unlike I guess you would call it work day that I have ever experienced in my life, and completely odd, completely different, Greg, of anything that I've ever had to, be around, manage, be a part of. Just extremely odd with going to bed New Year's Eve. I had a show to do until midnight on New Year's Eve, and I woke up from a phone call from my wife asking if I was okay, and obviously had no idea what she was talking about. And then I turned the news on after she gave me an idea what she had heard and what she had seen, and consumed me for the next couple of hours. And I'm sure for you it was a similar reaction, because I know we were watching football together earlier in the day, and neither one of us had big plans to really do anything or get out very much, and woke up just a very unfortunate circumstance with the terrorist attack that took place here in New Orleans 2 nights ago.
Yeah, it's awful, man. Obviously, it's hard to. The most important thing in our world is the game, right? Like in our world, for you and for me and for our jobs, like that was our sole priority. But it just puts things in perspective, right? Like there are families that have lost a loved one, so it's like, who cares? You know what I mean? But we still have a job to do, but who cares? You know what I mean? And it's a hard balancing act. I've dealt with a couple of difficult challenges and circumstances like this. Had one game get moved one time from Tallahassee to, from Jacksonville to Tallahassee, and that was challenging and because of a hurricane, and it was coming out the Eastern Seaboard. People died there. It's like, who cares about the game at that point? But it's a playoff game, so it's a difficult balancing act. But it's been strange. It's been a really, really hard 24 hours. I did get up yesterday, literally 24 hours from right now. And I went into get up not having known what happened 3.5, 4 hours earlier. I didn't know about it. So it just a tough day yesterday. Sad for the families, sad for the people that had their, all the hope springs eternal of the new year all goes away, and it's just a sad day. It's a very, very strange feeling emotionally, I think, for all of us involved with the game and all of us that were here in New Orleans with what went down the night before.
There's no doubt. It's just it was horrific to see the images, to hear about. We'll have a couple of folks with you today. Rodney Nabulsi is going to be with us later on the show today. He was actually out and down and about in the French Quarter on New Year's Eve, was actually out when the incident took place, and he covers the Georgia Bulldogs. Will give us an idea of what that team has been doing, what they did with an extra almost 24 hours that were unexpected, and how they're going to manage that. Tim O'Malley is going to join us at 9:30 today, give us the Notre Dame perspective. What did they do? How did they try to manage this? What does it change for them, if anything? It's not something football players, we are psychotic creatures of habit, and when you change that, oftentimes that disruption is not a real positive, even if it means more rest. And there are some positives that come with it, just because it's not a part of your routine, Greg. It's not part of what you expected to happen. And it doesn't change much, whether that's the day, whether that's the time, whether that's the schedule, how many periods of practice you have, when you wear pads, when you travel, where you stay. All that is almost exactly the same week in, week out. Even on the road, if you've played at that place a couple of times, you're going probably to the same hotel, taking the same way in, the same walk, same people. And so when that's disrupted, obviously that becomes something that you're not used to. And oftentimes football players don't really deal with that very well.
No. I think that's the toughest thing. I mean, we have to put it into perspective from a football standpoint. And for these players, the most important thing is the game, like advancing to the next round and continuing their hopes of chasing a national championship. So I think it's very tough. I do think it's a little bit more normalized to delay preparation when you are in a bowl site in an unfamiliar territory. If you've done, let's say this game was even in the Peach Bowl. Let's say this game was in the Peach Bowl for Georgia. How many times have they played there this year? Right? A couple of times. So that would have been a little bit off-putting. You kind of put your whole world and your whole week around peaking on game day. So usually the day after the game, you're kind of on the way back down. So it's going to be a challenge. And I mean, based on what I've been told, there haven't really been any instances in which the teams or the teams' families have been affected by what went down on New Year's Day. But I mean, 6 degrees of separation. There's a possibility they knew somebody that was involved with something, whether it was some of these guys played high school ball in the state of Louisiana. Maybe they knew somebody like Trevor Etienne. So I don't know, but yes, it's very difficult, I think, to compartmentalize what's going on in the outside world and play your game and focus on your game within the white lines. But that's what makes good players great, is being able to focus and kind of just get away from what's going on everywhere else.
Absolutely. And we started moving around yesterday, and we were, I'm sure, just like you and I texted talked some yesterday. After we get going and we saw what happened, you start to try to get back into that routine. You start to try to get going again the normal way that you would on a game day. And then you receive some messages kind of like, hold on, we're not sure how this is going to go, or wait until further notice. You see Laura Rutledge reporting that the Georgia football team is going to shelter in place. Not that I think that they would have been moving around a whole lot anyway. Just kind of that's not what you do on a game day. And then that became probably the eeriest, weirdest part of the day, is hearing from a couple of people that something was going to happen, weren't sure what was going to happen. Then the game was going to be postponed after you heard a press conference was going to be had. And then you just wait to see what time the game's going to be. We didn't know what time the game was going to be until late yesterday afternoon. Walking outside of our hotel, which I didn't do a ton of yesterday, and sitting in my hotel room overlooking the Smoothie King Center and the Superdome on New Year's Day in New Orleans, Louisiana, to see how light traffic was and how little amount of people were out walking around. That was, that made you feel like it was just surreal, because this is a vibrant city with a lot of walking traffic and a lot of people usually moving and going. And to see yesterday, Greg, just the little bit that we did actually get out, look out, and kind of feel the energy of this city that was just gone. It was just vanished. The life was sucked out of it for hours, and you're not used to that in this place. This is a place that provides so much energy, so much joy, so much life, so much vibrance, and it was gone yesterday. Just extremely odd to see New Orleans that way, because we're not used to it.
I didn't go outside. So, I mean, you went outside. Like, I didn't do it. They told us, like, we had a meeting in the morning at 8:30, got out about 10:40, fully anticipated doing the game at 7:45, and the people in New Orleans felt like it was going to be a display of strength to be able to continue on to play the game. That's what they had originally thought. I think once they swept the French Quarter and they found more explosive device, they were concerned about this being something bigger. And ultimately, they decided, I think, to sweep the whole city. So that's basically why they didn't have time to do that before 7:45 Central Time last night. So that's kind of why it went the way it went. But it was just kind of sitting around and waiting. Like, I had no reason to believe that the game was going to be delayed until the actual press conference itself. I think it was like a Pete Thamel tweet that was sent to our group, was the first time I had heard that the game would ultimately be delayed. And then I thought for sure that it would be 24 hours later in prime situation, until the teams said, you know what, we don't really want to land at 6 a.m. on Friday, because we have to turn around and play against Penn State, who's on 2 days rest, a week later. So we really need to get this thing moved up a little bit more so we can land around midnight and hopefully have the guys have a full recovery day before we have to get to work for the semifinal against Penn State. So that's why they moved it up. New Orleans and ESPN and everybody wanted it to be at night, but they moved it up because they felt like it was in the best interest of the teams and their recovery. So that's where it's at. And we'll go today, and gosh, what about a little under 8 hours?
Yep. And I think too, Penn State already has a day on these two teams, having played Friday night. And I'm sure that was a real part of the conversation where some of the coaches, some of the administrators saying it'd probably be best if we did it this way. So we're both live in New Orleans. Just wanted to give you an idea of how things felt, how things were here. Just a I said we had coaches calls for the First Responder Bowl last night, and when we were waiting for the last coach to come on, I said this was probably the laziest, most productive day that I've ever had, because it was. I mean, I changed my travel I think 4 times yesterday, trying to find different travel, trying to move some things around. We had to move our coaches meetings for that game up because we're not going to be able to do them in person today, obviously. And then just it was like you said, I walked out of the hotel just because I had to. I felt like I needed to move around a little bit, and I kind of wanted to go see the city a little bit. I didn't walk down near Bourbon Street, but just I felt like it was good to be out for a minute and wanted to move around some. But it's an odd day, a very just kind of sad day thinking about those lost. And you hear about Kareem Badawi, an Alabama student whose life tragically was lost. Tiger Besh, who you and I have covered Jack Besh when he played at LSU, played at TCU last year. Actually had a really good year. And just a family that is so well respected here in the state of Louisiana for so many different reasons. It's completely unfortunate, completely unnecessary, completely tragic. We hate it for everybody involved and hate it for this city. I watched the local news for a long time yesterday, and seeing people being interviewed about how they're not coming back and they're leaving, not staying for the game. You hate to see those things because this city doesn't deserve that. This is an awesome place, and we want it to continue to stay that way. So we're not going to harp on that too much longer. Not going to spend a ton more time on it. We just wanted to give you sort of boots on the ground here in New Orleans and let you know how things were going, how things felt, how things looked, because it was a very different day for Greg and I both. But we will move on from it, as this city is going to move on from it, and our country is going to move on from it. And we'll begin to talk some college football with what happened yesterday in the college football playoff next, right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Thursday, January 2nd, McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. We are live from New Orleans, Louisiana, getting set for the Sugar Bowl today. I'll be on the radio call. Greg McElroy will be on the television call with, is Laura Rutledge still on your game? Is she going to stay? She's got NFL. I know at some point, does she not?
Yes, she's going to Baltimore along with a few others from our crew that also work that game. They're just going straight there tomorrow.
Gotcha. So Laura Rutledge, Molly McGrath, Sean McDonough, Tom Hart, Jordan Rogers with me on the radio call today for the Sugar Bowl, 3 o'clock at Kicks. And we'll get into that one. We'll look at it. We'll cover that one across the course of the show today. But want to bounce into some of these college football playoff games from yesterday. What a matchup. What a freaking game between Texas and Arizona State in the Peach Bowl. Texas gets to 13-2, tied for the most wins in school history. Quinn Ewers, 20 of 30, 322 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Matthew Golden, 7 for 149. And a 4th and 11, Greg, with the season on the line. How Golden gets over the top of the defense, I have no idea. Why you drop a defensive end into the flat in coverage, which I don't think was going to really make any difference on that play, but you had to show some sort of pressure. I get that. Just excellent poise, a good pickup by the offensive line in the backs, and all of a sudden Texas goes up, and they end up winning that game, which I believe – was Arizona State down 24 at some point in this game? I mean, it looked like Texas
16.
was going to roll. And, well, every game that we've had in the playoff has had a 16-point lead at least. So we knew it was at least going to be that. But it was kind of what we talked about with Arizona State. Sam Leavitt moving around, keeping plays alive, and then a lot of Cam Scattaboo, man. He had 30 carries for 143, 2 touchdowns, 8 catches, 99 yards. He threw a touchdown pass for 42 yards. He touched the ball 39 times for 285 yards, accounted for 3 touchdowns. Just an incredible day for that young man. And it was almost one that you just didn't want to see either team lose because of some of the things that they did, specifically Arizona State with a couple heroic efforts. And they actually outgained Texas in the game, which was kind of weird. 5-10 to 375. They dominated time of possession, 37 minutes, 54 seconds. They were great on third down. It's almost everything that had to happen, Greg, for Arizona State took place that we discussed for them to be in this game or maybe win this game. It's just Texas made a couple of bigger plays later in the game.
Yeah, I mean, Texas has kind of fallen into a trap of doing this multiple times. Like, they jump on somebody. How many times have we seen Texas jump on somebody and then kind of take their foot off the gas and kind of just coast a little bit, exhale, and then have to finish with a bang to win the game in comfortable fashion? And I mean, like, I'm not saying it was comfortable last night at all, at any point, yesterday afternoon or whatever, but it was, I mean, I just feel like this team kind of lacks that, hey, we got you down, we're going to keep you down mentality, because they did allow Arizona State to kind of get back in, if not for about 2 or 3 missed opportunities in the red zone. It's a very different looking game for Arizona State. You mentioned Cam Scattaboo. I mean, he might be the biggest takeaway on the whole thing. Do you realize that he led the team in rushes, rushing yards, rushing touchdowns? That shouldn't be a huge surprise. He's their starting running back. But he also led them in receptions, receiving yards, and passing touchdowns in the game on Wednesday.
Incredible.
You realize how absurd that is? He's the first FBS player with 100 rushing yards, 50 receiving yards, 1 passing touchdown, 2 rushing touchdowns in a game. That is ridiculous. Nuts. He was amazing. He played great. I feel terrible for Kenny Dillingham because they're going to have some moments in which they will look back at that tape and think, golly, if we would have just taken the field goal there, if we would have just done this there, it would have been a different outcome. If we would not have brought pressure on 4th and 13 in the red zone, would it have been a different outcome? Probably. So I think that there's some things that they'll probably do from a self-scout standpoint, but you got to be proud of the effort they gave. And, you know, it seems like Arizona State's, maybe they're just getting started. You know, hopefully they can be back in the situation sooner than later.
Well, and you just imagine some of the pieces of the puzzle that Kenny Dillingham was not able to really attempt to put together when he put this team and assembled it. And he'll have some opportunities to do different things moving forward. Rushing yards, Arizona State, 49 carries, 214 yards. Texas, 30 carries for 53 yards on the game. It was a big game defensively for Trey Moore, 2 sacks, 2.5 TFLs. But it was Quinn Ewers making a couple of big plays late. And then Matthew Golden getting into the end zone on that 4th and 11. Cam Scattaboo doing a lot of different things. Now, Burt Auburn did miss 2 field goals. So in Texas, those red zone struggles, man, we talked about it, that there was a good chance it was going to come back and haunt them at some point, settling for field goals, then missing those field goals, Greg, almost put them out of this college football playoff.
Well, I think a couple things on that. One, Burt Auburn, wide right, wide left off the upright. Right. But another thing too, he's not alone. Do you realize that kickers are 0 and 4, 0 for 4 on go-ahead field goals in the fourth quarter of a college football playoff game? 0 for 4 all time. That's not like this year. That's 0 for 4, which I found crazy in a few different ways. One, how have there only been 4 attempts for a go-ahead field goal in the fourth quarter? And how have they never made one? So feel bad for him, but he's certainly not alone. I thought Quinn Ewers played a very mediocre football game for 55 minutes. Thought the first minute or two was great. And I thought the last 5 minutes in overtime was awesome. But those 55 minutes between the two, not great whatsoever. And they were able to get home with some pressure stuff. They were able to create some issues with their blitz packages. They clearly flustered him, but he hung in there and made the throws he needed to make to give his kicker 2 opportunities at the go-ahead. The final drive was a thing of beauty. Him running it around the edge and scoring that touchdown, a huge touchdown, diving head first, body on the line, huge. So I thought Quinn Ewers played a pretty average football game up until when it was absolutely needed, and he played lights out. So I think he deserves a lot of credit because he's been criticized a lot. But I do think he deserves a lot of credit with the resilience he showed in that game.
How much of that do you think was opportunity, G-Mac, in that just I felt like Texas may be a little stubborn with the run, and you kind of had to be. But then, 2, time of possession, we mentioned Arizona State dominates that. And I think some of what the defense was giving him, he didn't really have – I didn't feel like – and I hadn't gone back and watched the tape yet, but he didn't feel like he had a ton of opportunities to really push the ball down the field and be himself. Although I do agree, missed some throws early on in that game, had some chances to maybe keep the offense on the field and didn't. But did you think a lot of that was just sort of circumstance and opportunity for Quinn Ewers, or did you just think he was that off?
No, he wasn't that off. I mean, it just, the interception late's the one that bothered me probably the most. Arizona State had just secured momentum. There were a few times where he threw that big post into double coverage. He was lucky that it wasn't intercepted more. He's got to put less air under the ball in some situations. Like, it's allowing the defenders to recover too fast. Now, I know if you got one-on-one, put as much air as you want. It's going to allow the receiver to adjust to it. But you got to drive it sometimes. When it's a little tighter, you got to drive it because the window's not as big. You put these long, looping, arcing deep balls out there, these DBs are going to close on them quickly. And if they're beat, they won't be beat for long. They'll recover. So I think that's something he's going to need to adjust. Either that or throw it further and allow their speedsters to run underneath it. But that didn't seem like that was part of it as well. I just thought that there were a couple times he was probably a little too aggressive in the game. You could tell that they really want to take some shots in the game. I don't know exactly how many throws downfield they tried, but it felt like a lot. But yeah, I just think that he's got to learn how to use trajectory a little bit better if he's going to be able to be and hit some of those big plays downfield.
How concerned are we with this Texas defense moving forward? And I guess when I say concerned, in reference to us thinking it was a group that had grown a lot, a group that was really good, specifically that defensive line, middle of that defense. Now, we talked about off tackle, them being a little bit lighter. Yes, athletic, sleeker, twitch, but not as heavy-handed outside. They could get there at times. You put 88, 91 out there, you have the opportunity to get a little bit heavier, but still not super stout on the edges. And I think with some of the gap scheme stuff that Arizona State was running with Scattaboo, they were able to take advantage of that. But do you have maybe newer concerns about this Texas defense moving forward with what they may potentially see?
I got a lot of concerns with every defense going against Ohio State right now. Yeah, there's some concerns. I thought that they had a lot of opportunities though to drop them for minimal gains, and they missed tackles. I don't know what the missed tackle rate is. Like I don't have a PFF subscription where you get to go and see how many missed tackles there were and what their tackling grade was. I don't know what that would be. But I do know that there were a bunch of times that either defensive linemen or linebackers had Scadaboo stacked up and he somehow got out of it or fought for extra yardage. So I think that I'm not overwhelmingly concerned. I just think their tackling technique was a little dicey. I don't know if you felt that way. Um, I also felt like quarterback run at times gave them a few issues. Scramble gave them a few issues. There were so many times where I felt like they had Sam Levitt in a really tough spot, only to see him, magically get out of it and make something out of nothing, or turn what would have been a 9-yard loss into an incompletion. I felt like that happened time and time and time again. So, yeah, maybe there's a few concerns, but I think more finishing than anything would be the thing that bothered me the most.
No, I can see that. And then, two, you just think about the kind of plays that got you on. You can look at that, I think, in two ways. You get a receiver pass, a running back pass, a reverse. Like you said, scramble drill. Are you going to be able to, our team's going to be able to dial that up against you week in, week out. But this one they got coming up next is going to be an absolute monster and totally different than maybe anything that Texas has faced this season. Don't get caught in the cold. Schedule your system checkup now from a Train Comfort Specialist. Train has been recognized 10 consecutive years as America's most trusted HVAC brand and our exclusive home comfort partners here at Jocks. Visit train.com to find a comfort specialist near you. Another amazing performance by a freshman wide receiver in the Rose Bowl. We'll discuss that one when we come back next right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Tuesday, January 2nd, 7:31 a.m. Jocks 94.5. You can watch live on YouTube. Search WJOX. You can listen online, jocksfm.com. Just grab the app. You can do both. It's right there in your app store. Download that for free. Search WJOX. A non-competitive game, and maybe the one that everybody thought was going to be the most competitive yesterday in the Rose Bowl, GMAC. Ohio State 41, Oregon 21. Both teams 13-2. Ohio State will continue playing football. Oregon will not. Dylan Gabriel 29 of 41, 299, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Will Howard goes for 319 yards on 17 of 26 passing, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He has the benefit of throwing the football to Jeremiah Smith, who has been absolutely unstoppable most of the season, but more so, like an explanation point on it here late in the season and in the college football playoffs. In his college football playoff career in 2 games, 13 catches, 290 yards, 4 touchdowns. Felt like they moved him more this game, made more of an emphasis to get it to him in different ways. And once again, there was not much that the opponent could do about it, GMAC.
He was off the charts good. And I love how they now 2 games in a row, they have come out swinging. I mean, first couple moments of the game, and they fake a play that they run all the time early in the game just to get their quarterback in the room. They fake that. They throw the little pump, fake delay, fake smoke, pump, and it's out the gate. Next thing you know, you get them moving sideways. You got Oregon on their heels immediately. They're taking shots downfield. They're mixing run pass inside and outside. I mean, it's just like they have had teams on their heels from the get-go. And it's really impressive because it was almost the complete opposite in the game against Michigan. You know, where they kind of let the game come to them. They didn't really go out and take it. It's full go from the start here in the last 2 games. So really, really impressive performances and not overwhelmingly surprising given the talent that they have.
Yeah, it was a runaway early in this game yesterday, and got to that point where you just wondered, okay, this Oregon offense is explosive, probably built mostly for situations like this or to be capable in this, but couldn't find their way. Made some adjustments at halftime. Looked like they tried to get the ball out a little bit more quickly in the second half and try to let Gabriel work some, but he was under duress most of the game. Didn't have really time to get set up. Wasn't able to spend a lot of time in the pocket. The Ohio State defense had 8 sacks. Cody Simon, 2 of those sacks on pressures. JT, 2 sacks again, had a big game, showed up. The Ohio State defensive line, Greg, across the board, has now shown up in the college football playoff in a big way. Like Tyreek Williams was in the backfield. He was wrecking shop last night. It was, it's like we said, when this group shows up and you get that Ohio State defensive line, there's not going to be a lot that people can do about it. And you better have a plan to get the ball out quick. You better have a plan to make them run. And you better not have part of your plan being keeping them blocked for a very long period of time because it's probably not going to take place.
Well, the thing that I've found kind of amazing is, like, where was this group most of the year? Because I don't feel like they were this disruptive earlier in the year.
No shot.
So what happened? Like, what the heck happened? Did they just get better? Because I don't know how often that happens. I don't know if you see it that way, but it's crazy how much better they're playing the last couple weeks.
And it's one of the reasons that I was a little down on them heading into the playoff is we knew what that group was capable of, but we haven't seen this all season. We haven't seen this group be this disruptive all year. And just with Ty Hamilton being in the backfield, we haven't seen this group just across the board. Seemingly all of them have multiple moments of disruption in an individual game. Did we get Jack Sawyer look great in a game or two? Yes. Individually, did you see 91 take over a game at some point? Yes. Did you see 44 have a good game? Yes. But all of them together it hasn't taken place, I don't think, until we've gotten into this college football playoff. And something's different. That somebody's lit a fire, somebody's got them going, because they're going to be a handful moving forward. You better be prepared up front to deal with that and manage that. And then you got a freshman receiver, Greg, that I just don't know if there's any answer for it. And I didn't even mention Travion Henderson, who's taken a touchdown around in and scoring. I mean, he ran for 94 yards on 8 carries, 2 touchdowns, only 11.8 per carry. Judkins goes for 85 yards. When they're playing well, they are going to be difficult to deal with. And it doesn't look like a lot of teams in this playoff are suited to deal with that Ohio State football team, or maybe the one we've seen in both of these playoff games.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing. It's the defense to me that's more impressive. Like we know the offense has always had juice, but the remarkable improvement that we've seen defensively is just insane in the front. I mean, I haven't seen anyone improve this significantly. Um, Now, when you watch them, it's just amazing. I mean, just amazing to see how disruptive they've become. I mean, think about in the first game against Oregon, same personnel. It's not like someone got healthy. You see an Ohio State group get 2 pressures and 0 sacks in the first game against Oregon. Think about that. 2 pressures, 0 sacks. In this game yesterday, 22 pressures on 52 dropbacks and 9 sacks. Do you realize how? I mean, that is an
It's completely
absurd improvement. Explain to me how that's possible, and also, what do you make of the offensive line play from Oregon? Were they just sloppy? Because I mean, it looked like they had a hat on a hat. They were just getting beat.
I mean, I don't know how consistent it was, but I did think the thing that I took away, and keep in mind, I had some coaches calls during that game, and then some travel issues during that game. I was trying to manage. I wasn't totally locked in on it, but I had it on the entire time. It looked like the physicality was at least still there, and they were getting after guys. But also, I feel like I talked about with kind of moving Jeremiah Smith just a little bit. I feel like Chip's plan wasn't overly reliant on them just moving people on every play. And you go back to that Michigan game, and parts of it, maybe a lot of it was. And I don't think it's been that really since. So even though they did move Tennessee at times, which we didn't think would happen. So I think the offensive line's been a little bit different the last two games. I think the defensive line's been very different the last 2 games. And I think Chip Kelly has said, you know what, that freshman receiver, we're going to throw the ball to him. And we're going to make people try to deal with him because number 4, not a lot of people have an answer for. And they just feel like a totally different team. Have they been holding Will Howard back this year? Because there's part of it that feels like that also. I'm not saying that we didn't believe he was ever capable, but he wasn't really given some of these opportunities that he's been given these last 2 games consistently during the regular season, at least based on what I've seen.
No, absolutely not. He wasn't getting nearly. I mean, he had 2 targets, I think, in the game against Michigan. I don't even recall off the top of my head. I think it was something absurd like that. So if that gives you any indication, like biggest game of the year, arguably, partly because it's the next game, and he got just a couple. And it helps too that Will Howard is really doing a great job dropping it in from a far distance away. He in the last 2 games is 7 for 8 on throws that have traveled more than 20 yards downfield. And we're not talking like just, oh, guys are going up making incredible jump ball catches on underthrown deep balls. Like these things are right in the bucket. And they're allowed to, I mean, it's not like it's even been like horrible coverage either. Like, yeah, guy's got a couple steps on the guy, and he's dropping it right in there where it needs to be dropped. He's working all corners of the field. He's hitting guys down the middle, over the middle, and double and splitting coverage. He's hitting one-on-ones down the field on verticals outside the numbers. Like he's hitting it from all over the place. So I think that is also part of how this offense has evolved to the next level because the receivers have always been uncoverable. But now the quarterback's really making excellent throws down the field, and it's leading to an unstoppable attack. I mean, it's really outrageous to see just how accurate he's been on the downfield throws, and those have not been the throws that they've tried a lot of throughout the season. I mean, he's got 8 attempts. I think he had like 28 in the regular season on downfield throws. So they've opened him up. They said, hey, you're going to just throw it downfield, and guys are going to go get it, and we're going to make it happen. So they've acknowledged it. They've made adjustments, and, man, they're a tough team to cover now.
There's no doubt. All right, again, 8:30, Rodney Nabulsi covers the Georgia Bulldogs. He was out in the French Quarter when the, I guess, New Year's Day terrorist attack took place here in New Orleans. We'll get his thoughts on both, just an update on what the Bulldogs have done since. And then Tim O'Malley will be with us at 9:30 to discuss the Notre Dame side of things and how they have managed this and what that might mean for them against the Georgia Bulldogs in the Sugar Bowl at 3 o'clock today on ESPN. There's one game that has taken place since the last time we were with you that was not a college football playoff game that a lot of folks have a lot of things to say about. The ReliaQuest Bowl, how it went and why. Greg and I discuss that next on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. We will spend more time previewing the college football playoff, which continues today, 3 o'clock on ESPN, Notre Dame and Georgia. Greg McElroy, Cole Cubelic, we are both live in New Orleans, getting set for that game today. And if you want to be a part of the show, 800-239-9569, 800-239-WJOX. You can tweet into the show at Mac and Cube. Always be a part of it there, as we're going to talk a little bit of ReliQuest Bowl and then come back to some college football playoff discussion. Michigan 19, Alabama 13 in the ReliQuest Bowl. Alabama will finish the season at 9-4. Michigan will finish the season at 8-5. It was ugly in a lot of ways, GMAC, and it was a lot of the concerns, issues that this team has seen in Tuscaloosa this year showing up again, and some new ones. I imagine with some faces being gone, it complicated things a little bit. But Jalen Milroe couldn't really find his way. 16 of 32, 192 yards, touchdown, had an interception, had 2 fumbles, lost both of those fumbles. The Alabama offensive line did not look great. The continuity didn't look good. They weren't overly physical. The tackles had real issues, specifically in pass pro. Alabama ran 29 times for 68 yards in the game. Michigan ran for 115 on 51 carries, so it's not like they were just marching up and down the field. The Bama defense wasn't horrific, but Michigan got great field position, usually got that great field position off turnovers, capitalized, got some points early, led 16-0 at the end of the first quarter. Bama bounces back and can't find enough in the second half. It just didn't look good. It just looked ugly, and I don't really know another way to describe it, GMAC.
Yeah, it was awful. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, it was just bad. It was hard to watch. I mean, it's kind of the way it went. It's kind of a microcosm of this year, though. I mean, you have pretty decent inconsistency at the quarterback play. Really high highs, really low lows, and the team's going to follow that. I mean, that's just the way it goes. It is a hard watch, man. I don't know what else to tell you. It was tough, real tough. I thought Jalen played terrible. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. You can try to put a positive spin on all you want, but it's reality, man. Like, it was bad. I mean, the interception on the left-hand side makes no – I mean, just you can't throw that pass. I mean, it's like the ball control, one hand on the ball, just hard watch, man. Hard watch. I thought the defense battled. I got to give them some credit. I think they figured them out a little bit as the game went along. But it's just every time when I watch Jalen and when I watch the offense, like at times Jalen doesn't ever take the snap, except the snap with the plan sometimes. It's like, all right, well, I see on the final play. Let's just watch the final play. I'm probably in the pre-snap thinking pressure. It is Wink Martindale after all. Like his tendency is pressure. So I'm thinking that. I think the staff was probably thinking that. But I have to have that next level thought process before the snap. Like, all right, if they don't blitz here, where am I going with it? Like, what's my plan? And I don't feel like Jalen ever accepts the snap with the plan sometimes. It's like he was surprised that they didn't blitz, which is fine. I would have been too. But I have to know, hey, this is the next layer of understanding defense. If they're not going to pressure me, I have to understand I might need to buy some time, but there's no reason to move. I might need to, know, okay, well, hang on. Here's if it's cover 2, here's my answer. If it's cover 4, here's my answer. If it's cover 3 and they spin, here's my answer. If it's pressure, here's my answer. You have to know your answer to every single possibility against the defense that you're playing against. And I don't feel like we get that very often because he's so athletic that it doesn't have to have a plan. Like when in doubt, he can take off and make things happen. And I feel like that was kind of on display at times in the game. And it's a tough defense to play against when you don't have a plan. So it's tough, man. It's hard watching. It was a really disappointing finish.
And it's not just receiving the football and throwing the football. I think some of the stuff pre-snap, and I'm not going to pretend like I know that all of this is on him or every bit of it's on him, but some of the ways that you were moving your protection and managing your protection in that game, I was dumbfounded. And listen, we have fun with slide protection here and we talk about it. It's got its place. Go look at 4th and 8 for Texas for the season. If you don't think slide protection has a place, it absolutely does. But you have one extra defender on the line of scrimmage and you're sliding the protection away from him. And they got him on that multiple times, Greg. Multiple times, the same thing, and got beat the same way. And it's inexplicable. Like you said, what is the plan of if this happens, all right, we're going to slide it away from that in-man guy on the line of scrimmage. My back's out on a route. There's no one home to pick that player up. And if that's the case, the ball's got to come out. And that's the part that I know your quarterback lens was frustrated for some of the reasons you stated. My lens up front was like, dude, you've got 3 offensive linemen not touching anybody because of where they're going and the protection you've got them in. You mentioned the last play of the game, travel package, backs the first read out of the backfield. If he's covered, where do you go next? And that's where it looks like it's kind of like, uh-oh, you get to this expletive moment if the initial thing's not there on most plays, specifically in this game, and you just wonder how do you get to that spot? And then the ball security issues and different things of that nature can't happen. As you say, the corner out, the hook flat defender sitting there waiting to tip that pass and intercept it out in the flat, and sure enough, he does. So it's tough to see some of the regression in what feels like some simple things that it hasn't taken place this year. I'm not going to say it's gone backwards at the end of the year. It's never really been there the entire season.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't. So I'm not really sure what to say. It was just, it was a bad game, man. Like, it was a bad game. It's hard to sit there and be like overwhelmingly critical, like, because you could just rip this team to shreds if you want to. But I don't think that's any benefit. You have to still acknowledge that it's the first year, new system. Coach had inherited players that don't really fit what he does in some cases. They're kind of just trying to do the best that they could, and they've got some good wins. I mean, they might ultimately look back and have wins and register wins at LSU and against the eventual maybe national champion. We'll see what happens with Georgia. But there's still some good moments in this year, just way too many inconsistencies. But that's what happens when your quarterback's inconsistent. That's what's going to happen. It's just the way it is. So, unfortunate, but learn, live, and move on, because there's not much that can be done about it now.
All right, we've got Doug in Moundville on the Buyers Right hotline, 800-239-9569. If you want to get in today. Doug, what are your thoughts?
Hey, guys. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
My big takeaway from this is, what in the world has Ty Simpson done to not deserve at least one series? I mean, at some point, my friends and I were rooting for Jalen to throw an interception and tackle him and get called for targeting, just so somebody else could get a shot at quarterback. Well, why don't we see at least give him a break, give him somewhere on the sideline, just hold a clipboard for a second, while somebody else gets a shot at playing quarterback? Why don't we see that at least once?
The only thing that I would say to that, and I understand your sentiment, specifically when you're watching it with your investment, you're battling in a game. And I think a lot of times coaches are very weary of making that kind of a decision when you have an opportunity to win. And the consistency hasn't been there. The weather was bad. The protection wasn't good. You probably valued mobility with the pressures that you were getting, specifically the ones that you weren't picking up. Not that it worked out with Jalen in the game, but you at least hope that he could make some of those personal adjustments and be able to find his way out of it. That's where I would go, Greg. I get it. There are times you look at it and say, can't get much worse. But at the same time, to throw Ty Simpson into that situation, it's sometimes hard to imagine it could get a whole lot better.
Yeah, and just remind me, when Jalen got benched against USF, and they gave Buckner and Ty Simpson a chance in that game, what was the effect on the team? Like, how did Jalen handle it? Because if you think he handled it well, you're wrong. And I think that he had other guys that, were on his side and made it known with their play that day that they were unhappy and not thrilled with the fact that he didn't start the game. So last time it happened, didn't go well. So I don't think it'd be something that, it's not really necessarily a reflection on Ty. It was 18 months ago. I don't know what kind of player Ty is today compared to the player that he was that day. But I think they probably went into it, hey, we want to finish what we started. And, hey, the last time this guy got the hook, it didn't go well, and it had a resounding impact on the rest of the team because, he's got a lot of the team on his side for whatever reason in some cases. So, I think that there's some important things to acknowledge here, that this was Jalen's team. He stayed. I think there's probably some appreciation from the staff for him staying and giving them a chance and all this stuff. And had he left, who knows how many people would have left after Nick Saban decided to abruptly shut it down last year and retire. So I think that there's probably a little bit of loyalty in there too from this staff and some appreciation for the staff, even though I know for a fact there's a ton of frustration with the staff and Jalen as well. So
absolutely.
I think that there's, it's a weird and a delicate situation. But it's not that surprising if you really want to look at it from a holistic view.
All right, let's try to get Pell and Panther in before the break. Panther, welcome in. Happy New Year.
Hey guys, how y'all doing?
Doing well.
Y'all doing okay?
Yeah, doing well. Thank you.
Look, I'm gonna speak on a lot of behalf of Alabama fans. These next 3 years are not going to be good with the board. Alabama just needs to get rid of him now. Hey, if he can't win with Saban's talent, he's not going to win with his. And I think Alabama fans have got some hard years coming ahead once we get rid of him now. He can't
How
do
much
it.
of Saban's talent was on that roster? Because I'm pretty sure there were like 27 guys that went in the portal after the season last year.
I understand that, but look at how many players that he's losing in the portal now. He's losing recruits.
Tell me which guys in the portal now that you're really worried about besides Justice Haynes.
That's the one I'm worried about.
A running back?
No, yeah, I'm worried about him. I'm worried about the receivers that left. I'm worried about
the receivers that all couldn't play.
You got computers in front of you guys.
Hey, Panther, we appreciate the call, man. We'll spend a little time on it when we come back. And a lot of folks are going to go to the star ranking discussion there. But as Greg said, how many guys wowed you on that football team this year in the ways that we had previously been wowed?
How are we going to replace guys that drop passes and can get open? Man, that's going to be tough.
So there's a little bit of a roster flip that needs to take place, not just from a talent perspective, but from a fit perspective as well. And Kalen DeBoer deserves an opportunity to do that and be able to right the ship. We'll discuss that game, get to more of your feedback next, right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 8 a.m. Hour number 2 underway. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, live from New Orleans. And I'm overlooking the Caesars Superdome as we speak. There is a heavy police presence all the way around the dome. Patrol cars kind of moving. They've got them stationed at every corner. Guys walking around the building. So there's an extra emphasis there. And Greg, having talked to some of the folks, it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult to get into that stadium today than it has been, for good reason.
Yeah, and if anybody is listening to this and plans on going to the game, give yourself ample amounts of time. Even for someone that has a credential, all-access credential, I was told to, and I'm staying right next to the dome, I was told to leave an hour before I needed to be there. It's literally a 5-minute walk. So just to keep that in perspective if you are going to be going to the game today.
Also keep in perspective, Greg goes to the game 7.5 hours before kick, because I feel like he needs to go through an entire thesaurus, an entire dictionary, and look at every player on the roster's background, all on the day of the game from the stadium. So
if you think that's the case, then you are dead wrong. But we have our camera meeting 4 hours before kick, which is a little more than it's been in the past. It used to be 3, but with this crew, it's 4. So camera meeting when I meet with the cameramen at 4 hours before kick. So yeah, it's a long day. These games are long days for sure.
Listeners don't really know the behind the scenes there. I've been giving Greg a hard time because he goes to the stadium so early. My crew usually rolls in about 2 hours before kick, which I feel like is normal. And then I heard Greg goes 4 hours before kick, which is just totally. It's pretty.
I can't believe y'all don't have a camera meeting. Billy P's got to get it together.
Yeah, and listen, as much praise as I've given him over the last couple of shows and interviews I've done, maybe it's time to give him a little bit of hell here for what he's doing and how he's handling things. All right, did want to go back to Alabama, Michigan. If you have more feedback, 800-239-9569. You can tweet into the show, at Mac and Cube, the easiest way to tweet in. Always be a part of the show there. We appreciate the feedback. 19-13, Michigan gets the win. 3 straight bowl wins for Michigan now. 2nd straight win as a double-digit underdog. It's the first time that Michigan has won consecutive games as a double-digit dog since the FCS split in 1978. They did it in a little bit of an old-school manner. Davis Warren gave him a little bit of balance early, but it's not like he was slinging it everywhere. He leaves the game. And you had Orgy, who at least had some reps this year and offered you a little bit something that you had worked on to be able to lean on. Alabama finishes with 9 wins this season. Greg, that snaps a 16-season streak of double-digit wins. It was the longest in major college football history. Florida State would be next from 87 to 2000, going 14 straight. Clemson went 12 straight from 2011 to 2022. 4 losses this season is the most since 2007. A season low 68 rushing yards in the game. Bama was entering the game averaging about 183 rushing yards per game. Milroe goes 16 of 32, 192 yards passing. He threw a touchdown. He had 3 turnovers, 1 pick, 2 fumbles. Greg, it's his 3rd consecutive game with 3 or more turnovers. 9 of his 17 turnovers this season have come in the last 3 games. Just really odd to see where his game has gone. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up with you, Jordan and Tom and I, the one time that we did leave the room yesterday, we're sitting downstairs having this conversation because Twitter was alive yesterday with Jalen Milroe's feet and him potentially tipping off plays. I've seen the videos. I've seen the people talking about it. I have noticed it earlier in the season, but I didn't have Alabama late in the year, so it's not something that I would have spent that kind of time on to really take into a game and try to discuss. But his feet are definitely a little bit more staggered the majority of the times when he's going to pass the football. They are parallel to one another, or I'll call it lazy, when he's not, and he's just going to hand the football off. I think the thing that complicates it is there's a lot of plays going in that he doesn't know if he's going to hand the ball off or going to throw the football. But in obvious drops, it looks as though his feet are much more in a ready stance, so to speak. Because the way I described it, Greg, one, I think folks are about 90% right if you're looking at it that way. 2, the way that I suspect it is, this is just me, just my opinion. I don't know. I didn't talk to him about it. I don't know how he feels about it or if he's tried to adjust it. It feels to me that when he knows he's going to drop back, he's excited, he's tense, he's ready, so to speak. But then when he's going to just hand the ball off, say to Jam Miller, he kind of his body almost deflates a little bit. It's just kind of like, oh, I can relax, like this, like he exhales a little bit, and so the feet are lazy. But when he's going to throw, it's almost like he's tensed up, like he knows he's got to do something a little bit extra, and that kind of forces the difference in stagger. The last thing I'll say about it, then I want your thoughts on it, is if you think that people are playing defense that way, I don't really know what to tell you, because there's no 3 technique in America that is looking through a guard at a quarterback's feet potentially being staggered or flat and making a decision on how he's going to play that play. That's just not real. Like, no linebacker is not reading their keys, guard to running back to quarterback, whatever that might be, and just focusing in on a quarterback's feet and all of a sudden playing the play a totally different way. That it's just, you can't do it. And then I'll tell you this, some of these weird offenses that we got in this league the last couple of years, Arkansas was really bad with it for a while. Ole Miss had runs when they were really bad with it for a while. And that wasn't so much quarterback, it was more running back or H-back or tight end. And with where people are lining up these hybrid tight ends nowadays, they'll usually give away where they're going on a play. If they're going to split, they'll have that foot inside the tackle. If they're going out on a route, they'll have that foot outside the tackle. But there's going to be that one overhang where all of a sudden you've seen it 20 or 30 straight times, and then boom, it doesn't happen and they hit you. So my point is, even though it appears to be accurate, and I do think it's about 90% accurate, you can't live and die on it. You can't play defense that way. You can't coach defense that way. Can it give you some advantages at certain points in time? Yes, it can. But it's not ultimately the difference in a play succeeding or failing, in my opinion.
I'm with you. I've never felt like things like that were the end-all, be-all. Because the one time you decide that, hey, all right, he's clearly throwing it here, and you decide to rush the passer with tremendous intensity, and all of a sudden it's a quarterback draw, you're dead. You know what I mean? Like, you're dead. So I've always kind of just treated every play the same. Like, were there tendencies back in the day? Like, could you look at whether or not a linebacker was kind of on his toes? And was that a tell? If a guy was in a track stance, was that a tell? If a corner squared up in press coverage and the safety's 3 yards outside the hash and the corner's looking at the receiver, was that a tell for corner blitz? Like, yes. Like, sometimes but guess what? There have been times when I've guessed wrong in protection, and sure enough, I got. Like, there's a reason why Peyton Manning got sacked in his career. Every once in a while it happens. He can be the smartest player to have ever played the game, and if Peyton Manning can't diagnose and guesses wrong sometimes, or picks wrong sometimes because of disguise gets him, then so be it. So I don't think that that's the end-all, be-all. Honestly, I really don't. Like, I think it's kind of much ado about nothing, and there's too many things that you have to account for in a 10-second span. You can't pause video and point things out and adjust differences. Like, if you could pause real life, that'd be great, but you can't. So I think in a span of 5 seconds, you on defense, you're never sure when they're going to snap the ball either. I mean, offense could snap the ball with 15 seconds on the shot clock, or they could snap it with 5 seconds on the play clock. So it's not like you have time to identify and pass, run. Like, you don't have anything like that where you can do that with a lot of consistency. So I get why people are making note of it, but I don't think that leads to ineffective play or the defense being prepared for what you're going to run.
800-239-9569. You want to get into the show, tweet in at Mac and Cube. The one thing I'll say about it, Greg, because we could say the same, how many guards do we sit there see playing light and we think they're pulling? Or how many defensive tackles? When I watched Miami leading up to the Pop-Tarts Bowl, I could tell you I was about 90% accurate telling you what stunt Miami was going to run every play, because the 3 technique, the defensive lineman over the guard would be tilted in a little bit more, and the defensive end had a more north-south stance than he was kind of turned sideways to rush the passer, and you knew they were coming inside and the inside linebacker was going outside. It was every single time. But if I got that stance one time and said, all right, well, we're going to attack the linebacker coming outside, here's outside zone, boom, next thing you know, they don't run that and they play it straight up. We don't have enough bodies for it, and the play's a bust. I guess what I'm saying is you can't live and die that way. You can't play the game based on that. So therefore, it's not going to be something that determines whether or not that play passes or fail. My issue with it, and what I feel like people's issue with it should be, is if it's this blatantly obvious to so many people and it potentially affects anything you do, how have you not made that adjustment? How has that not been corrected? And I would imagine, based on the people involved, that a lot of that is an individual decision to not make that adjustment. And a lot of that is individual stubbornness in not being able to repair that. Because I can promise you guys, if you notice it, they notice it. And there more than likely has been a conversation about it at some point or time. Would you agree with that, G-Mac?
I would say that there's 90% likelihood that it's probably been brought up. I don't know for sure, but I say probably greater than 90% likelihood it's been brought up. And guy doesn't want to change. Guy's not going to change.
Nope. All right, 800-239-9569. You want to get into the show. Bob in Pike Road wants to chime in on Alabama. Bob, welcome into the show.
Hey, guys. Love the show. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling.
My concern is, and I coached high school football for 15 years, is we did regular reviews on our tendencies and what we were projecting to our opponent. And then we would do things to go against our tendencies, or if we were tipping something, we would change that. And me and a couple of my buddies went through almost every game in the last day or so, and I mean it's literally 85 or 90% of the time accurate that he's tipping. And the problem for me is this: you look for things as to whether DeBoer and Nick Sheridan are doing what they should be doing as elite, top-of-the-line SEC college football coaches, and that's a glaring red flag that they're not fixing that. Because, even if it only affects 5% of the plays in a football game and it gives the opponent an advantage in 5% of the football game, that is a huge problem. And the fact that they haven't fixed that is to me a red flag. Tell me where I'm wrong.
How do you know they haven't tried to fix it? That's my question.
Yeah.
Well, when it happens 85 to 90% of the time, throughout 85 or 90% of the plays, it's happened. If it hadn't been corrected, then are they ineffective as coaches? Because that has to get fixed. You can't be that way. Because again, even if it only affects 3, 4, 5% of the plays, that can't happen. That's massive. And you give your opponent an advantage on what you're going to do on 5% of the plays you run in a football game. I mean, you're way behind the 8 ball. So we got a whole nother problem if DeBoer and Sheridan have tried to fix it and they weren't successful at fixing it and either just gave up or have been all year trying to fix it and didn't do it. That to me is a red flag. Now, I have never coached on the college level, but I have extensive experience coaching on the high school level, and I'm telling you, that is not acceptable on the big-time elite high school level, much less in the SEC. And to me, and I am a huge Alabama fan, and I've credited you, Greg, with being a legend at Alabama, and I still believe that, and I always will. But that is a problem, and I want the board to do well. But that scares me because it makes me to think he's not paying attention to detail, he's not an effective coach, or he can't influence his players. Either of those three, that's a problem. Anyway, that's my two takes. I'd love to hear what you have to say. in
No,
response to
and I
that.
think that's where we were going is the kind of the end of the quarterback portion of that is that if you know that's there, how do you not auto-correct that? How do you not work on that? And I would imagine that folks know that it's there. A lot of times things are coached that don't get done, and that's why you have to make the changes. Sometimes you don't have a lot of options in what changes you can make. Adam wants to chime in on Alabama. Welcome into the show, Adam. You're on the Buyers Right Hotline.
Hey fellas, how you doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Wanted to give a quick sympathy for all the New Orleans victims. That's tragic that it has to happen like it did. And, hope this world cleans up a little bit and we can find some peace somewhere. But just wanted to talk about Milroe as a quarterback overall. I feel like he's been a great role model, great quarterback, just kind of a great pitcher for Alabama football in general. But looking at DeBoer's offensive play style and how he operates, and you look at what Penix welding guy, right? And some of these Bama fans are really just hounding DeBoer on how he's not, living up to par of what we should expect. But what it comes down to, I feel like, is the offense that he's successful in running is not what Milroe fits in. So I just wanted to chime in and get your thoughts on what you think, a new quarterback would look like under DeBoer's system per se, as far as, looking at Killian Russell or maybe even Ty Simpson, just, some guy that can sit back there and just sling the ball. Wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I appreciate the call and appreciate you listening to the show. And I mean, Greg, you've said it for the majority of this season that there were just aspects of Jalen Milroe's game that weren't going to be a direct fit, things that he struggled with that probably needed to be more of a strength if you were going to get this offense to its peak and be able to get it to max capacity. And some of that just hasn't happened this year. I think then you see him be ultra successful in some of the quarterback runs. So you try to implement more of that, but then he gets away from being the runner that he was at times. And then that becomes something that's not necessarily a strength anymore. So I can see where a lot of that back and forth tug of war with this offense and the individuals and the staff could easily have been a headache for a lot of this year.
Yeah, I mean, if he ran it the way he's capable of running it all the time, then I think it wouldn't be that big a deal, but he doesn't. It's just the way it is. If he threw it the way he threw it at times against Vanderbilt, then it'd be different. I mean, he's just an inconsistent player. He's streaky. I mean, it's just, and like when he's on, he's great. When he's off, he's not. Like last I checked, and people will go back, check it. Go watch Indiana in 2019. Like they use quarterback run. Like they have it. They've used it. It's been successful. So I think that this offense is one that can be adapted to the personnel. I know that with certainty because I've seen it. But I just think when your personnel, it's not like, oh, well, he can just run it all the time. He doesn't run it well all the time. I don't know why that is. You'd have to ask him that or ask somebody else that. Like he doesn't hit the hole at 1,000,000 miles an hour all the time. I don't know why that is. But it's kind of frustrating, honestly, from a distance. So it's just he's just an inconsistent player. That's just where he's been, and I don't care what the coach is or what the offense fit is. The offense will work if the players are consistent. And if I know what I'm going to get from my quarterback, I can coach around his flaws. But if I don't know what I'm going to get from my quarterback, how the heck do I coach around the flaws? I don't even know what the flaws are sometimes. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's bad. Sometimes the things he struggled with, he does great at other times. It's all over the place all the time. So I think that's tough because there's enough flashes where you're like, oh man, this is amazing. But there's also enough moments where you're like, goodness gracious, why'd he do that? You know what I mean? So I just think it's a tough spot to be in.
All right, so we'll get to a break, come back, more of your feedback, more of your calls, 800-239-9569. Alabama and Michigan, the Tide finished the season 9-4. What's next? We'll discuss that and get back into the college football playoff. A little bit of what this game is going to look like today and our thoughts on it. And then Roddy Nabulsi after that updates us on the Georgia Bulldogs and what they have done with this delay. That's all next on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. College football coming up today, Thursday, January 2nd. You will get 3 o'clock on ESPN, Notre Dame, a 1-point favorite against the 3 o'clock on ESPN, Notre Dame, a 1-point favorite against the Georgia Bulldogs, 12-1 Notre Dame, 11-2 Georgia, in the Sugar Bowl in the college football playoff. Winner of that game moves on to play the Penn State Nittany Lions. Also tonight, 7 p.m. on ESPN in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, you will get Duke at 9-3 against 9-3 Ole Miss. Ole Miss a 17.5-point favorite in that game, by the way. So you got some college football coming up. This game we're going to be a part of today, Greg, now with some of the complications that we already talked about. New quarterback for Georgia. You down one of your better defenders for Notre Dame. You have to piece together how to deal with almost a full day's delay. And as football players, we are creatures of our habits, and now this will be something that's just different for these guys. You said you were told Georgia went and had a walkthrough in the stadium yesterday. I think that's great for them to be able to sort of just move that aside and be in that building and just get the feel of what it's going to be like to go over there. So a real positive for them. We'll talk to Tim O'Malley at 9:30, see if Notre Dame was able to do the same. And we've got Rodney Nabulsi, who covers Georgia, coming up after our next break. But this is one that both coaches, when I talked to them at Media Day, physicality was one of the emphasis points. And I think Marcus Freeman welcomes it. I think he wants his team to be able to prove that they can do it. I think Kirby, with a little bit of extra time off, is more concerned about getting to that level again. And they had Tate Ratledge told me that they almost had training camp for a couple of days, went really physical in practice, but a team that's been a little bit beat up, you don't want to do too much of it. So do you feel like there's an advantage with the physicality on one side or the other in this game?
You know, I think it's tough. I mean, shoot. I think the physicality, I've had Notre Dame 2 times this year, a handful of times last year. I've been around them quite a bit, having called probably 6 or 7 Marcus Freeman games. And, dude, they are a lunch pail type team. Like, they are a hard hat lunch pail type team. Like, they like to get after it. They'll hit you. They are a really physical bunch. So I don't think that Georgia, most of the time, when they show up, they have a significant advantage in physicality. I don't think that's the case against Notre Dame. I think this Notre Dame team can play. And if it becomes a line of scrimmage war, I think they can be perfectly fine in that scenario. So I don't know how you feel about it, but I don't think that there is a side that I would significantly favor in terms of physicality.
I don't think that scale is heavily weighed one way or the other in this one. I think that's a part of Notre Dame's teams that would surprise some people. I am a little concerned about the defensive line later in the game. Maybe not right out of the gate, but later in the game. If this game is 17-17 with 8 minutes left in the fourth, the potential for Georgia to be able to begin to lean at that point with good numbers at tight end, pretty good numbers at running back now. They've gotten more healthy there. And Notre Dame not being at full strength up front, that would be a concern for me. That with a freshman quarterback, a first-time starting quarterback, your best advantage is probably to go get him, force him into mistakes. And if Georgia had the ability to just hand the football off the majority of the time for the last 8-9 minutes of this football game, then that would become, I think, more of a Georgia advantage. But outside of 97 for that Georgia defense, this is not the group that just anchors and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's not that they don't have size and don't have physicality. It's just that's not what you watch and say, goodness, nobody's going to be able to manage that. Nobody's going to be able to handle that. And the same thing with the offensive line. They haven't been successful because they have bullied people this year. Now, the last couple of games, it does feel like middle to late fourth, going off tackle has been something that's been a problem for some defenses. So if they can get to that point, Greg, I'd flip the meter over to being a Georgia advantage, but Georgia's got to get there first.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. And I look at Georgia, and I think a lot of people are kind of wrapped up in, okay, how much does the offense change? How different will they be with Gunnar Stockton at quarterback? I look at their defense. I think the defense is great, obviously. Like, we know that. I know they have great athleticism. I think they're healthier on defense than they've been in a while. There's a lot to like. But I also wonder, when talking to you, like, how confident are you in Georgia's offensive line? Because that's a group that I have not trusted very much this year. It's a group that I don't feel super confident in. I am cautiously optimistic. Maybe their best football's in front of them because they've had some injuries and they've had some inconsistencies. So how do you feel about that group working against this Notre Dame D-line?
I don't feel really good about it, to be honest with you. Don't feel like that they're going to necessarily just get taken advantage of or, get pushed around the room. But it's not a group that I feel like has been, like you said, one, consistent, and two, has been able to successfully play bully ball for the majority of this season. So if they get an obvious pass downs, then I really am worried about it because the tackle situation has been a problem. It has not been a strength. And whether it's been Monroe Freeling or Ernest Green out at left, it hasn't really gone well. Truss has played right and left. That hasn't been great in pass protection. And with a younger, more inexperienced quarterback, that's where I think that really becomes an issue. Specifically with like a Bryce Young out there who, yeah, he's a freshman, but a lot of twitch, super quick, can get upfield in a hurry. Now that's where I think Georgia looks at having some potential problems there. We'll talk more about Georgia, though. Talk about that offensive line, what the Dogs have done since this game was delayed with Roddy Nabulsi, who was also down in the French Quarter on New Year's Eve. He'll share that experience with us as well next on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Thursday, January 2nd, 8:32 a.m. right here on Jocks 94.5. Watch live on YouTube and search Jocks 945 there. Listen on the app. That app is in your App Store, iPhone, Android. You could watch or listen or catch up on all the podcasts there. Also do it at jocksfm.com. Roddy Nabulsi covers the Georgia Bulldogs. Want to get his thoughts on what had been happening with this Georgia team the last 20 hours or so, and then also his experience on New Year's Eve. Roddy, you've been here covering the Bulldogs, media day, and then further past that, but you decided to venture out on New Year's Eve and be a part of Bourbon Street and be a part of what normal people usually go down and have a wonderful time for and have a great experience with, and then stayed out there until this attack took place. Can you just take us through what that was like, what you saw, what you were feeling, and now looking back on it, just what you remember from it?
Yeah, we're staying on Canal Street, so we're about 2 blocks away from the entrance to Bourbon. It's I'm looking at my window right now. I can see the policeman down there. It's blocked off, and a lot of people had, prior to going down there and talking about what they would do on New Year's Eve nights, like, hey, where are you going to celebrate New Year's in New Orleans? And a lot of people said, I'm staying away from Bourbon Street because it's dangerous and wild. I'm looking for something a little more mild. And I've been on Bourbon Street New Year's. It's pretty fun. So I went and did that, and sure enough, I was headed back about 2:30 and walked right through the heart of Bourbon Street. There were police everywhere. The night before, I put out a photo of I think it's like 8 or 9 mounted horsemen, cops who were on horseback right at that same entrance. And then the following night, they had a car in front of that entrance, and then they had a little armored like SWAT team carrier beside it. I was telling people, said, look, there are lights everywhere. They have those lights on stands, with the little generators going everywhere. There's game management cops down there, there's state patrol, local New Orleans PD. There's 5 or 6 different law enforcement agencies all up and down Bourbon, helping people out, being nice, being friendly. People are taking pictures of them. They don't mind. I had a guy walk up to a cop, heard him yesterday, said, hey, how do I get back home? He was so drunk he didn't know where he was. So the cops were, I'm like, this is a great police presence. And I actually took a picture of that armored carrier thinking, that's a little overkill. And apparently I walked into my hotel and texted one of my buddies that I made it back, and I texted him at 3:15, and apparently that's when the whole thing went down. So it's just the feeling on Bourbon was that everything was fine. And then, of course, that changed in the blink of an eye, and everyone woke up to the carnage and the death and the disbelief. I'm like, there's no way that could have happened on a street that was so well guarded. But it shows you what one fanatic can do with, when they don't care if they die or not. So just a very different feeling here in New Orleans from, where it started on New Year's Eve to the New Year's Day.
What did the Georgia Bulldogs do yesterday? I know they had a walkthrough at the stadium late afternoon, early evening. Other than that, I haven't really heard about what all they've done. So what was kind of the daily schedule for them yesterday?
Well, the game would have been so late last night, 7:45. So, and you talk to the players, they hate those late games. They said, look, we're bored out of our minds. We'll have breakfast. We'll have kind of a position meetings. We've already done the walkthroughs, and you're just kind of killing time watching other games on your phone. All the same things applied yesterday, but then they started, hearing that, hey, you're not allowed to go out. I mean, they wouldn't normally on a game day go walking around downtown anyway. They keep them pretty busy, or at least together. But then you were told to shelter in place. So all these hotels around here said, look, don't go out, stay there. There's other stuff going on. We're still investigating. They had 400 policemen, combing the quarter. This happened very close to the Georgia team hotel. So with reports of IEDs and suspicious packages and stuff like that everywhere, they kept them inside. And then, of course, it started hearing the game's going to be postponed. So they were all just kind of waiting and trying to find out what's going to happen. And once the game was moved, they said, look, these guys are pent up. They got to do something. So they went to the Saints practice facility and had a walk through there just to kind of, I don't want to get their mind off of it, but, give them something to do and an extra day to prepare. And maybe you're changing, a tweak here, tweak there, but you got to give these, some guys something to focus on besides just the news. So that's what they did yesterday. And again, they'll have, big breakfast meetings today, and then prepare to go over to the stadium for the 3 o'clock kick.
Roddy Nabulsi covers the Georgia Bulldogs. He joins us now on the Buyers Right Hotline. Update on the Dogs the last 20 hours or so. And then we haven't really had you on to take a look at this game, this matchup. Georgia's had time to get healthy. Kirby seemed concerned about that time off when I visited with him at Media Day, just understanding that you get out a little bit of rhythm, you get out a little bit of routine. There might be a little bit of rust. What have you heard about bowl preparation, bowl practice for this team as they head into this matchup against Notre Dame today?
I'm sure he was not happy. I mean, they were glad to get the bye, but at the same time, because it's maybe one less game, but it's also that huge swath of time off. It's really easy for guys to not get out of shape, but get out of the routine. Players like routine. They like knowing, the same system, and it works so well. Kirby has it choreographed throughout the week down to the minute. He actually wants 2 football fields a little closer from practice so that, when they're out there and they're switching from positions to indie drill to good on good or whatever, that they can get faster. So they are big on choreographing every possible minute. And then when you have, an extra weeks and days off, it just it drives Kirby nuts. That's why he's already talking about it. So what we've heard going into this, there's a bunch of guys that are fighting to get back. There's a bunch of guys finishing up their classes. This is a pretty healthy football team. But I'll tell you what was more interesting to me than their prep was what they've been doing in the, kind of the weight room. When we watched the 2 teams at Media Day, I got vibes of TCU, not score-wise, of course, but just size-wise. I saw the defensive front for Notre Dame. They're not very big compared to Georgia's offensive line. I mean, I don't think they have one guy over 300 pounds on that Notre Dame defensive line. Georgia's guys are giants. You walk through the offensive line, it feels like you're walking through a redwood forest. And I don't know, Georgia's not been good at running the ball this year. They're 15 out of 16 teams. But if they can design a run and mash it, Notre Dame, it would not shock me. But again, they haven't been able to do it against anybody else. But this is not one of the bigger defensive lines that they will face this year.
No, they're definitely undersized, but they are athletic. I will tell you that. They are undersized for sure.
They can fly. Yeah.
They can fly and they can hit you, but they are definitely undersized. There's no doubt about that, especially with the loss of Riley Mills. Gunnar Stockton's been a hot topic of debate. I think he's going to be fine. I don't know that for sure, but I do think he's going to be fine as long as they don't put too much on his shoulders. How do you anticipate him playing in this environment?
He's an absolute gamer. The kid had like 177 touchdowns in high school. You saw him come into that game against Texas. They didn't change the offense. They ran the same stuff, but they also ran, maybe a little more, a little read option, run a design quarterback run, quarterback draw. You have a few more plays that you used to run with Stetson Bennett back in the day. But at the same time, you asked Mike Bobo about this specifically. I'm like, Mike, his backups. You saw, Gunnar Stockton almost get knocked out in the Texas game. His backups have never played a snap for Georgia. So if anything were to happen to him, you're not going to run him like you're seeing all these other running quarterbacks do, because if he has to miss a snap or miss a series, you're going to bring in a true freshman, Ryan Puglisi, and say, hey, this Georgia season's on the line. Throw that 15-yard dig route and put it on the money. So I just don't see them changing the offense a whole lot. I think Gunnar is fine. He's an absolute baller. He's a warrior. I do think Marcus Freeman, though, with the time, will be able to, say, hey, we're going to show him some looks, some coverages, and try to trick him. He just doesn't have the experience. How do you take advantage of a guy that has not played a ton of college football? So I wouldn't be surprised, like you said, if they don't put too much on him. Don't make it too complicated for him, because they're going to Notre Dame's going to try to trick him and make him force him into mistakes. But it just comes down to executing the offense, making the right reads, making the right decisions, tucking and running, knowing when to tuck and run, when to throw the ball away. The kid is he's really good. I'm not really worried about Gunnar Stockton. I'm more worried about if Georgia can run it.
Roddy, great stuff. Thanks for the time. Glad you're safe. Appreciate you sharing your story with us this morning and giving us some more insight on this Georgia football team. We'll see you over at the Dome.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Roddy Nabulsi covers the Georgia Bulldogs, joining us there on the Buyers Right Hotline. Just giving us a little thought on what Georgia did with that extra time and his thoughts on this game at Roddy Nabulsi. You can follow him on Twitter. Go see all of his work at ugasports.com. All right, so a lot more to get to on this playoff, this game today, games that took place the last 2 days. We will get to those, get to some of your feedback as well at Mac and Cube. You can tweet in. But just remember, when you retire, the paychecks stop. How are you going to pay your bills? Do you have a plan that will help you accomplish that regardless of market changes or unstable economy? If not, and you'd like to get one, get in touch with Tad and Tony Hill at Freedom Financial. Go now to askfreedomfinancial.com to find out how you can protect your retirement. That's askfreedomfinancial.com, askfreedomfinancial.com. This is a paid placement for investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor. What do we think has to happen for both Notre Dame and Georgia to win this football game today? We'll discuss it next on Mac and Cube in the morning. .47 Thursday, January 2nd, Jock 94.5. We are live from New Orleans. Greg McElroy on the call for the TV version of the Sugar Bowl today, 3 o'clock on ESPN. I'll be on the radio call with Tom Hart, Jordan Rogers at 3 o'clock today as well. All right, so we talked about this game. We talked about it the other day when we were on the show. This is our first show of the new year, so Happy New Year to everyone. But Georgia Notre Dame, Greg, let's start with Notre Dame. offensively, things that you feel like have to happen for them to win this football game?
I think they have to be on schedule. They can't get into third and long situations. That's when they'll get in real trouble against this pass rush. I think they have to be able to lean on the run game naturally. I think part of the thing is if they can run it inside, great. That's where they'd like to live. I don't know how much success they're going to have in there. So they can't hang on the interior run game between the tackles too long. They might need to lean more towards the perimeter run, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And then I think they got to take a couple shots. It doesn't mean that they need to live by taking shots, but if you can steal some yardage off play action, I think that's going to be really important, because you know that this entire Georgia team has been told for weeks now, you got to stop the run, you got to stop the run. You stop the run, you can make them very, very, very difficult spot to be in if you're Notre Dame and they stop the run. So I think you can probably catch Georgia napping a couple times by trying to get up involved in the run game with their safeties and take some shots over the top. So I think that's kind of the early play for them, but I also think you're going to see a lot of different things here in this game from Notre Dame that you probably haven't seen, because they probably know this is the best defense they've played all year.
Well, you and I have talked about the edges of this Georgia defense multiple times this season and how they can be great. I talked to Michael Williams at the media day. I don't know if that was 2 days or 7 days ago now, because I have no idea what day it is or how many days I've been here. But they've gotten themselves in trouble a little bit. Chaz Chambliss will play down a little bit. It'll be overly aggressive against some of the gap scheme runs. They'll try to win with quickness at times, maybe when they shouldn't. And it's not that they're not stout or can't do it. It's just there's a different aggressive nature with how they play things. Can Notre Dame take advantage of that? Is that an area that you think Mike Denbrock and Riley Leonard can have success against this defense, specifically how over-aggressive Georgia can be at certain points in times out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to. I mean, you have to, when you have guys that are this quick, this twitchy, this capable, you have to kind of use their aggressiveness against them. And that, guess what? That can be done. Like, that is doable. It's difficult, but very doable. So I think that's going to be something very much part of the conversation is the misdirection. Also, zone read pulls, things like that, jet sweep pulls. They're not really a quarterback power team, but quarterback power has hurt them. So it wouldn't surprise me that much if it gets installed. For instance, Texas isn't a quarterback power team, and then sure enough, you see quarterback power against Georgia. So I think that that's something worth watching as well. Just going to be really interesting to see how things kind of go and to see how they attack them, because I think it'd be really easy for people to say, well, look at how they used Haynes King and Georgia Tech. Look at how they ran it on them. And look at some of the things that Haynes King and Georgia Tech used with success en route to running the ball as well as they did. But then you look at what Notre Dame is and what Notre Dame does, and their offenses are very different. Yes, mobile quarterback, sure, but very different styles of attack. So I think that's something I'll probably be watching too, is just how do they attack them and what types of runs do they attack them with.
Talked to Mike Denbrock at that media day as well about movement, misdirection, different things, and he said, yeah, we've got to move the pieces around, but not just after the ball snapped. He said we need to do a good job of shifting, trading, motioning before the snap as well to try to see if we can get them wrong before the play even starts. So I'd expect a lot of that from Notre Dame today, and with the extra tight ends that they're able to utilize, it's a good group that they like, and then being able to maybe go extra backs if they had to. They've got the ability to move those pieces and maybe be able to take some of those yards. What's the workload ideally that you think Mike Denbrock wants on Riley Leonard tonight? And what type of workload does he want that to be that he probably thinks could deliver a win for this Notre Dame offense?
I think he's going to want to give Riley a lot of opportunities. I mean, Riley's a good player and has kind of proven more and more as the season's gone along to be a more capable passer than I anticipated. I would say that he didn't really throw it great in the first 6 or 7 games of the year, but the last 5 or 6, it's been better. He's been a little bit more aggressive, or a little bit more accurate on the downfield throws, which has opened up some things underneath. And now, as a result of hitting some downfields, he's getting more efficient because teams are having to play a little softer, and you take some of the underneath stuff, which is going to improve your efficiency numbers. So I think it's been pretty good how he's developed Riley Leonard, and I would anticipate that to continue. I think Riley Leonard will play well today. He could very well be the key to the whole thing, because if he hits a couple downfield throws, then the world is his oyster offensively.
So let's flip that around before you head out. You're going to need to bail a little bit early to make sure you get over there and get ready for this game. What's the key for the Georgia defense then? Is it Jalen Walker or somebody up front? Is it Malachi Stark, somebody on the back end? What is the part of the Georgia defense that has to show up and has to be successful today?
I think they have to be really good on first and second down, and they need to be excellent as far as tackling is concerned. If you look at the teams that have come off the bye so far, these teams have not tackled well. They have been somewhat sloppy. You've seen penalties. You've seen bad ball security. I mean, Ashton Genty had 2 fumbles all year and had 2 in the game a couple nights ago. Partly because he just hasn't been hit. He hasn't been tackled. People haven't been punching at the ball against him in practice. So I think that they need to not make mistakes, because other teams have that have had the long delay. And they need to also make sure that they tackle really, really well, because that was not the case for a lot of these teams coming out of the gate after a 3.5 weeks off. So those 2 things I think are of the utmost importance. I think they also need to make sure that they're really sound in their gaps. Because you look at these backs, like, you give them one crease and it's out the gate. And they are really good. I mean, Jeremiah Love had very little room throughout the course of the game against Indiana. As a team, I think on 30 carries, they ran 94 yards. If you remove the 1 carry they had for 98. So they better be gap sound. If they hand it off 30, 35 times, you better be gap sound on all 35, because the one time you're not, it's over. And big hitters in this game, I think big hitters and explosives, as well as turnovers, those are the 2 most important factors in this game, because both defenses are great. So if you can hit some explosive plays, put some points on the board from deep, you're going to be in a great spot.
We'll see how it plays out today. Good luck on the call, man. I'll see you over there at the Dome.
Sounds good, buddy. Come sneak in the camera meeting. Let's talk ball. Let's talk about the O-line.
I'm not gonna be there 6 hours early, so I'll probably miss that. But and
well, if it's
not
6 hours, I better hustle.
Not necessary to go to a camera meeting when you're not going to be on camera. So I'll
well,
pass.
You know what they say about us? We have a face for radio and a voice for print. That's where we are.
Totally fair. Georgia band beat you to the stadium, though. They're out there getting ready right now. They're in the parking lot, just unloaded.
Yep.
You better.
They're
I'll see you.
not wide
I'll see you
receivers.
over there. Tell Wimp
right.
I look forward to listening for his blue plate.
We're gonna get it from him too. We'll get that
Hold
blue
his
plate.
feet to the fire. We need the blue plate.
We'll get the blue plate from Wimp Sanderson when we come back. McElroy heading out to go get set for his TV call of the Sugar Bowl today. That'll be at 3 o'clock on ESPN. We'll talk a little bit of the Duke's Mayo Bowl, Duke and Ole Miss tonight on ESPN. Can Duke find ways to give Ole Miss some headaches? That'll be an interesting talk. And then Tim O'Malley going to be with us at 9:30, just kind of update us on Notre Dame, what they've been doing, what's changed for them over the last day and a half. All that and more coming up next right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. All right, hour number 3 underway. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, Thursday, January 2nd, 9 a.m. Listen online, jocksfm.com. He joins us each and every week. McElroy moving on, by the way. He's got to go get set for television. We are both live here in New Orleans getting set for the Sugar Bowl. Thanks to our friends at Coke and Piggly Wiggly, it's the coach, Wimp Sanderson. Coach, how are we doing today?
I'm doing okay. You know, I'm going to jump around on you again, so just hold on and say, Wimp, why'd you do that? Why'd you jump around on me so bad? I think what you do, what you have done in your career, being an offensive lineman, is the most difficult thing in the world to play. And I think you, Milroe, didn't have a great game, did fumble early. Didn't play as well as they needed to play. I'm not one to get on here and tell you everything I know about football, but I just think they didn't. I don't know that this might have been a mental game. Now I'll let you answer this. When I look at it and I'm saying to myself on media, and I'm a kid, they're losing all their half their running backs are not going to play. The Lions have gone from 13 to 17. Michigan doesn't have all their team. Does that make me where I'm not ready to play mentally? Talk about those two things.
I think that we hear a lot of coaches talk about noise and perimeter noise and noise outside the building. It's almost impossible not to hear this day and age. So when you keep hearing about a team maybe getting weaker and not being at full strength, and how big of an advantage that's going to be for you, I think it's almost impossible not for that to creep into the back of your mind and make you more confident. But that's, as you know, Coach, that's false confidence. Real confidence comes in your actual preparation and how you go get ready and how you take care of yourself and how you can best have your performance to be at its peak when you're going to play. So, yeah, I think it's probably an issue, and I think maybe some of those guys heard that. But the defense wasn't bad. The defense didn't play poor. Them hearing that, I don't know if that affected them that much, but it's. Yeah, when you hear that a team's not going to be able to give you maybe the fight that a lot of other teams you played and at particular times in the season, then that could be a bit of an issue for sure.
And I don't know exactly how to ask this. Does the offensive coordinator have things ready to run, thinking what the defensive alignment is going to be? By that I mean, I hear people say, well, the defense dictates what the offense does. They say that to me a lot, and I'm a non-football guy a little bit. So maybe the defense, maybe I'm thinking what I know the defense is going to run at a certain that kind of thing. Does the defense? Are you able to buy in that the defense dictates what you do? Because I think Alabama could have had a little bit better running game throughout the season. Any comments on that?
Yes, you usually run. I mean, you want the numbers advantage, Coach. So if you're giving me 4, 5, 6 in the box, we should be running the football. And there are very few offenses this day and age that just run plays. You have options on almost every play. That could be an option to hand it off or throw it. That could be an option to run it right or left. That could be an option to get into a just specific pass play. And then you have an option maybe sometimes to hand it off or keep the football. But you want to go where the numbers advantage lies with you. And that's what makes things like Ohio State, Michigan so difficult. Michigan was giving Ohio State good run looks. But they couldn't run the ball. So people said, well, why they try to bang their head against the wall? And they tried to play Michigan's game. Well, no, they did what the numbers predicated that they should do. It just they couldn't execute it. You still have to go execute anything that you want to do. I mean, you know that. I mean, somebody can double team a shooter, and if that shooter's still knocking down threes, it doesn't really matter. I mean, So I mean, it's that's what Greg and I talked about with some of the protections earlier. Is you can get into different protections, but you have to also know where your weak spots are in those protections. And if that's taken advantage of, if that's compromised, you got to either throw the ball away or take your check down or get to your next read faster because you're not going to have a lot of time to operate. And that's what I saw as a major flaw. in maybe not only the plan, but the execution of the plan in that game for Alabama against Michigan. So, yeah, it's all, I mean, defense is more reactionary after the snap. Offense, I think, is more reactionary before the snap. And you take a plan, you take a plan into a game of what you like. I'll give you a perfect example. We've got the First Responder Bowl tomorrow, and North Texas has an interim coach, an interim defensive coordinator, Barry Odom's brother. And we talked to the Texas State coaches, and they're saying, we've seen, a couple games of him, but now he's had time to put more of his stuff in. Like, we don't know what they're going to look like. Yeah. So you go in probably with a heavy plan of what they have already run and how they can vary that. But you better have an alternate plan of, if they put this in, we're going to have to go with this. Or if they're going here, this is what we have to do. And it's not that you completely change your offense. It's just you call certain plays different ways. I mean, one of the best examples of this from my media career was Missouri, Georgia a couple of years ago in Missouri when Missouri had them on the ropes. And that was a national champion Georgia team. I mean, Missouri, that game was over. And they got up early. They were moving the football. Georgia couldn't move the football. And Georgia was all zone scheme early on. And Missouri was an attacking front. And they were getting upfield, and they were spiking the outside zone, and they couldn't do anything about it. Second half, it was almost all counter and power, gap scheme, blocking back, pulling around. Well, Missouri was getting their ass upfield the way that they were in the first half, and they were taking themselves out of plays, and all of a sudden Georgia starts busting some runs. And so it's not that they didn't have those plays. It's not that they invented some new play on the sideline. It's just, it's more of an indicator of what you need to do when a defense is playing you a little bit of a different way than you thought.
Okay, maybe a little bit. I have you the head coach and said to him, I'm not going to play in the bowl game. Now going through an era of that change, does the coach already know that I'm not going to play the second half as a quarterback? I said on our radio show, going to do that. My other people that called in said, "Oh, Wimp, I am." That is the most. I think it's a very interesting question in talking radio. Tell our listeners about that.
Well, we had this game and we had meetings with the coaches. Mario told us that all systems were go and that it would be as normal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have information that I trust since the game has ended, that the plan was to break the record and play the first quarter. And from that point on, Coach, I don't know how it went or what happened. It's the reason that I didn't ask him about it at halftime, because I saw how Cam Ward was playing, and I think we all thought, I don't think anybody was watching that game saying, well, he's not going to play the second half.
That's right.
Because he played incredible in the first half, and he took a couple hits, and he was moving around. It's not like he was out there visibly trying to protect himself. I mean, he was competing. And then when you hear all the stories that Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, told us, that Xavier Restrepo told me about how he handles himself and how competitive he is and holding guys accountable, and just he's a killer. There's none of you that was sitting there thinking, yeah, he's going to bow out and not play in the second half. So those things can change, but I mean, this happened with Bo Nix in the bowl game. This happened with Malik Neighbors in the bowl game. He's not the first guy to limit himself or come out early in a bowl game. It's just, this was high profile for a lot of reasons. He might be the number one pick in the draft. He also had a record to break, and he broke the record and then came out after the record was broken. So, but when I saw it was a 3-point game at the half and the way Iowa State was moving the ball, there wasn't a single part of me that didn't think he was going to play in the second half of that game.
Yeah, and I lose the game, and I've got 10 other guys that play with me when I get out there to play.
Well, Coach, and Jordan brought this up on the broadcast, when Iowa State kicked the extra point to go up 1, and I think there was 2.5 minutes, something left. Jordan said on the air, he said, "Do you consider putting him back in?" And I'm like, if you're a coach, can you put him back in? What does that say to your team then? I mean,
no. It says the team is running the show rather than you. That's what that says. No, you can't do that. I don't think it. You can't. I think I'll play this. I think I'll play this series of plays, but I don't think I'll play the next one. I think it's a bunch of baloney. Um, I think that's a good question. We could talk all day about it. And I know kind of in a hurry, but I did not understand. First of all, Arizona State got screwed. The most unusual game I've ever seen. I don't know if you got to see it or not. They got screwed because there's no doubt there was targeting. No doubt there was a targeting thing for a 15-yard penalty. But when they line up and it's fourth down and 13. And I know it goes back to Alabama and Auburn when he threw it 4th and 30, all that crap. If I were coaching, I wouldn't rush the passer at all. I'd move back with all 11 guys and try to tackle the guy before he got in the end zone. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, you're not wrong, Coach, but I don't think that with a quarterback that talented and receivers that talented that you can afford to just sit back.
Okay.
I'm a fan of forcing the moment because I don't think quarterbacks like to move ahead of schedule. And I think when they are forced to make decisions, the chances of things going poorly for them increase astronomically. But I'll say this, if you go back and watch Texas's fails in protection this year, I would bet about 60-70% of them have been off the edge. And that's not where the pressure came from for Arizona State. The pressure was bailed in the middle before the penalty. And then
There wasn't much pressure.
the pressure was bailed off the edge on the actual 4th and 13 attempt. And I wouldn't try to get that group up the middle. I would try to get them off the edge. That's where I think people have had success against them. And so that's what I didn't like about the call. But it's a misread by the safety. You can't let a guy get over the top of you. I mean, not in that situation.
Well, I know y'all got to go, so I'll pick I'm not very good on these blue plates. Whoever I pick, you go the other way.
Okay.
Now I'm going to pick Georgia because I think Kirby is very, very good. I think here we are. Georgia is not the Georgia past, but good enough to beat you. Notre Dame, it is a surprise the way they played, so you don't know, and I don't know if they're going to play that way again. And then I will pick Ohio State to win it all. Ohio State has the best players. Those best players have decided that they want to play. And after the Michigan loss, planting the whatever they did, after the Michigan loss, they got themselves ready to play, and Oregon wasn't in the game. So I would go with the blue plate. I'd go with I'd go just as I say. I would go with Georgia. Go the other way if you wish. You might be right. And I'd pick Ohio State. I also pick Coca-Cola and Piggly Wiggly. Coca-Cola, you walk in, walk out with a smile on your face. They do a great job. Stanley and Andy have been friends of mine a long time. Coke is a great product. I drink the Diet Coke or sometimes a regular Coke. And they've got great foods at Piggly Wiggly. Appreciate you guys having me on. I look forward to listening and seeing you today.
Coach, we always appreciate the time. Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you.
All right. That's the coach, Wimp Sanderson, joining us on the Buyers Right Hotline, 800-239-9569. You want to get in one more time for this show, you can do that, as we'll break down a little bit more of today's matchups between Notre Dame and Georgia, Duke and Ole Miss, when we come back on the other side. Any thoughts on Alabama, Michigan, because this is the first show we've done since that game took place. We can hit that one as well. Getting you set for college football coming up today, right after this on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 9:17 a.m. Thursday, January 2nd, Jocks 94.5. Getting you set for some college football today, and had a great day of college football yesterday. I'm live in New Orleans and getting set for the Sugar Bowl. I'll be on the radio call for that one coming up later. GMAC on TV with Laura Rutledge, Molly McGrath, and Sean McDonough. We know Penn State took out Boise 31-14. I have no idea what day that was on. What was that, 3 nights ago? Was that a Tuesday night, Monday night? I don't even, who knows what night that was. Earlier in this week. And then Texas takes down Arizona State 39-31. Heck of a comeback for Arizona State. Heck of a performance for Cam Scatterbo. He touched the ball 39 times, accounted for 284 yards and 3 touchdowns. As McElroy said, he was the leading rusher, both from an attempts and yard standpoint, leading receiver, both from a receptions and yard standpoint, and the only player to throw a touchdown pass in the game for Arizona State. Arizona State defense did a really nice job against the run, but had an opportunity to win that game on a 4th and 13 in overtime and couldn't get it done. That extends it for Texas, and they would go on to win it, and they'll move on. Matthew Golden, 7 catches, 149 yards, had a touchdown. He was exceptional in this game. The Texas defensive line, not exactly what we had seen from them before. They did miss 2 field goals. They lose time of possession. Arizona State outgains Texas, but outrushes Texas, but they can't find a way to ultimately get the win. I thought Sam Levitt was good. He did what he needed to do, moving around, keeping plays alive. Had 1 interception, but 24-46, 222 yards. He wasn't the one that was going to win in the game. He just couldn't lose the game for him. And I thought he did a lot of nice things to keep drives alive for that Arizona State offense. Then last night in the Rose Bowl, Ohio State smashes Oregon. And I don't know what has been the biggest surprise of this playoff, but maybe it's just both of Ohio State's performances. Maybe it's just Ohio State in general. Not that they've won, but how the dominant nature in which Ohio State has won these football games that they've played in this first ever 12-team college football playoff. 41-21, Ohio State gets the win. They were the more physical team by far. That's the second game in a row we've said that now in these playoffs. 13-2, both teams. Will Howard, 17-26, 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Gabriel ties the record for most career touchdown passes in on college football history, but goes 29-41, 299, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He couldn't find anything early. He was under duress seemingly on every snap in the first quarter. And the Oregon running backs carried the ball 15 times for 21 yards in this game. There was no rushing attack for Oregon to lean on, to try to drive play action off of, to try to steal the eyes of Ohio State defenders. It just flat out wasn't there. And that allowed Ohio State to tee off. And that was a problem for the Oregon offensive line and for Dylan Gabriel. Jeremiah Smith, dynamo freshman receiver, 7 catches, 187 yards, 2 touchdown receptions. He was unbelievable again. He has been unbelievable in this college football playoff. 13 catches, 290 yards, 4 touchdown receptions in 2 games. Thought Ohio State did a much better job moving him in this game, making it an emphasis to get him the football in this game, specifically early. I mean, that first post that they threw him on play, I think 3 or 4, I mean, it looks like it's initially double coverage. Then the corner bails into it as well. There's 3 Oregon defenders within 2 or 3 yards of him, and he goes up over 2 of them to make the catch. That was probably the point that everybody should have looked at it and said, I don't think Oregon's going to be able to manage this kid, and they couldn't, and they didn't. So it was an amazing performance from him, and Ohio State moves on. Ohio State looks like the team to beat right now. We'll see how these 2 teams look later today with a little extra time off, with possibly some distractions. Georgia having a first-time starting quarterback. Notre Dame, their best defensive lineman not going to be playing, at least their most physical defensive lineman. So there are a couple of things that make this game a little bit more interesting than just what it was going to be on the surface. I think when you look at this game tonight, Riley Leonard has to operate the offense well. He cannot take chances. If a play is going to be dead, let it be dead. If Jalen Walker comes free off the edge, just eat the football or get it out quickly and throw it in the stands, which the stands are like 40 yards away from the sideline in this game. So I think you'd be good enough just getting it out of bounds. And he's got to do a little bit of work with his legs. Now, does that mean he's going to get dinged up a little bit? He's going to take some big hits? Probably. And I think off tackle is where you need to pay attention to what Notre Dame is doing tonight. Now, Notre Dame has probably been better with the zone scheme than they have with some of the gap scheme stuff. But can Mike Denbrock mix it enough to be able to keep this Georgia defense on their heels, maybe find ways to steal their eyes a little bit, get them jumping in different directions, and then get some easier yards than what Georgia normally gives you. Georgia Tech did it, but this is not necessarily as read heavy or move heavy offense that Georgia Tech is going to implement. So they're going to bust out a little bit more of that. I think you'll see them move pre-snap a little bit more. I think you'll see a lot more formations that start one way and end another way for this Notre Dame offense. And keep in mind, Jeremiah Love, he had that 98-yard touchdown run against Indiana. If you get him out on the edge and somebody's a little bit over aggressive and tries to jump it inside or outside, and you give him that kind of space, he can take it to the house. But I'm interested to see if Glenn Schumann tries to implement something similar to what I think Al Golden has and most likely will implement, and that's playing a lot of man coverage and dedicating more bodies to the box. I think the biggest schematic advantage that Notre Dame has in this game is their ability to play man coverage. They absolutely suffocated Indiana with this. There was not a ball thrown by Rourke that it didn't feel like Notre Dame had an opportunity to make a play on. I mean, that's how tight the coverage was. I also thought that Al Golden did a great job starting in man coverage closer to the line of scrimmage and then utilizing some of those players either in pressure or in run support. And it didn't look like they were going to be that initially because you're coming up, you're playing press coverage and you're playing close to the line of scrimmage and you've been man-to-man most of the game. Then all of a sudden, you're letting those guys bail off of coverage and play the run later when you know man coverage has been an issue for that team. So how he can mix and match that, I think, could be a huge advantage for Notre Dame in this matchup. And let's just be honest, we don't really have a good idea of what we're going to get for Gunnar Stockton. We haven't seen him play a full game as the quarterback at Georgia. And these tackles for Georgia are gettable. Bryce Young and company can find their way into the backfield. R.J. Oben and company can get back there. Howard Cross can get back there. Now, they're not all doing it off tackle, but they're going to be able to find ways to be problematic, get into the backfield, and I think pressure Gunnar Stockton. You heard Rodney Nabulsi a little bit earlier in the show talking about that backup quarterback situation. It's not an area that Bobo wants to go. I know talking to Mike Bobo earlier this week, he basically was playing that ping pong match in his head of, all right, how much do I run him? How much do I let him run? How many hits do I want him to take? Because it's not all just about having an inexperienced Gunnar Stockton. It's about what you have after him and how protective you now need to be because he also got knocked out of the SEC championship game. So there's a lot of interesting little factors for both of these teams and how things are going to operate, how they're going to be able to work different things. Can Dominic Lovett win one-on-ones? I mean, I don't know. Can Arian Smith win one-on-ones? Probably down the field, yes, but can he catch the ball after he wins a one-on-one? That's the biggest question with number 11 for Georgia. Do we see more London Humphreys in this game, somebody who I think in an intermediate route perspective might be more capable with man-beater routes? We hadn't seen a ton of him this year, at least not as much as we thought we were going to see, 15 catches for 244 yards. And then does Georgia maybe try to go heavier with extra tight ends and try to play a little bit of bully ball with Oscar Depp, Lawson Lucky, and some of those guys? I do think if this game is tight late, it's advantage Georgia because they have been able to lean on people late in games recently, and they'll be able to implement that outside zone with ATN and those extra tight ends, and they'll widen the surface, and it's a thin Notre Dame defensive line. There's just not a ton of bodies that they're going to be able to rotate in and out, and I think that would begin to work against the Irish late in this one if it took place. It's going to be a fun one. I think a bloodbath. I think it's going to be a heavyweight fight. It's going to be a physical tilt. I'm looking forward to it, a lot of aspects of it, and we'll get it at 3 o'clock today on ESPN. Tim O'Malley will give us his thoughts on it from a Notre Dame perspective. He covers the Irish. He'll be with us next to discuss it live here in New Orleans on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 9:30 Thursday, January 2nd, right here on Jocks 94.5. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Listen online, jocksfm.com. Mention Greg and I in New Orleans, Tim O'Malley in New Orleans as well. You can find his work at irisillustrated.com, at Tim O'Malley ND. Follow him on Twitter. Tim, just wanted to get you on first and foremost. Happy New Year. Thanks for taking some time to be with us. What has happened with this Notre Dame football team? How have they managed a little bit of extra time off after the tragedy that we saw here on Bourbon Street New Year's Eve?
Yeah, there's an interesting dynamic to this, that even after that IU game, no one went home for Christmas. It was everybody's been together since basically December 22nd when they had that day off. So it's been a group that was pretty closely knit, and it was forced to be that way yesterday. They woke up and had a regular team meeting. Obviously they didn't know the severity of the attack, and they had a regular football related team meeting. They trying to find a way to kind of manage if anybody needed to talk to somebody about what was going on. That existed for both teams. At some point yesterday, team meetings, and then they had a team run, and they were able to kind of transition into, okay, the game is at 3:00 local time. This is going to be just like a regular. They'll have normal procedures today, but I find it kind of an intriguing thread that they've all been and the team since, I guess, December 22nd. And when you're in a hotel the entire day, I think that's exacerbated probably.
Absolutely. Tim O'Malley with us talking Notre Dame as they'll face Georgia in the Sugar Bowl today, 3:00 on ESPN after being delayed from yesterday. When we dive into this matchup, Greg and I talked about the physicality earlier on this show. Do you lean one way or the other with a certain team having that advantage in this matchup?
If I do, it would go to Georgia simply because Riley Mills isn't there for Notre Dame. He was probably one of their two best players this year defensively. Obviously, Xavier Watts had a fantastic year at safety, but not only that, but Riley Mills has that 6'5", 305-pound frame that the other guys up front don't. Howard Cross is a fantastic player. He missed 4 games this year late in the season, but he's 290 pounds. I know he's a 2-time All-American. He's also 290 pounds, and that can add up. His backup, Donovan Heinisch, is 290 pounds, fast playmaker. When you're playing against an interior like Georgia, I think over the course of the game that adds up. Now, Riley Mills' replacement, Gabriel Rubio, is another bigger guy. He's 6'5", 310. He can battle in there. Looking back, he's, I think, 30 snaps is his career high because he has never had to play that much. Cross and Mills there his entire career. This is a pretty big opportunity for him, but Gabriel Rubio is a guy you wanted to have play 25 snaps in relief of those guys inside. It's going to be interesting to see how he holds up going through the fourth quarter. And I think what they'll do is Howard Cross will start at the nose with Rubio at defensive tackle. That's Mills' position. Honestly, I think Howard Cross is the backup defensive tackle with Donovan Heinisch coming in. So when you see Cross and Heinisch in a 3-man rotation in there together, that is going to be a much smaller tandem than you're used to seeing in modern college football. But they are quick. They are playmakers. It's just every once in a while you wonder if they can get caught in the wash.
Absolutely. Tim O'Malley with us talking Notre Dame heading into this matchup with Georgia in the Sugar Bowl today. The perimeter offensively, it's not the strength of this football team. And it's no news to you, and I think a lot of people would understand they're not going out there and just beating people at wide receiver. Is there one particular, though, that you feel like has to stick out today, has to make some plays either through the screen game or just downfield? Who has to show up out there for Notre Dame today, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think there's two. Jordan Faison, he's one of their smaller players. He was originally a lacrosse recruit. I think people know his story by now. The first time he showed up in his second play of his career last year against Louisville, he scored a touchdown, and no one knew who he was that was doing the game because they had never seen him on the roster before. He's really quick twitch guy. I think he would be a great number 3 college receiver. Unfortunately, he is kind of in the position of being Notre Dame's possibly best number 1 wide receiver. But the other guy would be Mitchell Evans at tight end. I know this is kind of bringing it more to the power game again, but last year Mitchell Evans, when healthy, he tore a little bit. You saw him kind of score a touchdown against US. Looked like he did last year. And in fairness to him, he tore his ACL on Halloween weekend last year. But when he's at his best, I mean, he was the best player on the field against Ohio State last season. On a room, that's just a field full of pros. He could be a difference maker. It's he and Faison I think you have to look for right now. And then, of course, you know that, I mean, the screen game for Notre Dame has not been efficient, but it sure is effective because when it hits, it goes long. And I think they're going to need that against Georgia. I actually think most plays, if you're just a grade all 65 offensive plays, Notre Dame's offense will be a little bit inefficient today, but it's can Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love break off the runs they normally do. And when Love breaks off a run, it's over. That's a touchdown.
He's the guy that we saw against Indiana be able to bust one. What do you think is the ideal plan for Riley Leonard today, as far as what Notre Dame needs from him and wants him to be? More runner, more passer? Does he just need to avoid mistakes? What's the plan for Riley Leonard that you think equates to a Notre Dame win?
Yeah, I do think avoiding mistakes is number one. That's for both teams because their defenses can be so good at times. I'd like to see Riley Leonard attack it a little bit more downfield. He gets a little bit he is not a great downfield passer. He never has been, but if it's not all checkdowns, when it's too many checkdowns for Riley Leonard, I think that makes the offense a little bit stagnant at times. That's when you get the 3 and outs, the 5 and outs. If he's averaging 5-6 yards a pass attempt like he does at times, that's a bad sign. I really think when there's shots to be taken, it would be great for Riley Leonard to be able to take a few of those shots because we were talking on our Irish Illustrated Insider podcast. You know, Marcus Freeman goes for it on 4th down all the time. He's a gambler in this way. But if you're going for it against Georgia on 4th and 2 at the 50 and you get it, you still have 47 yards to go. I think this might be the day that Riley Leonard takes a shot, and I think that would really augment the running game. And Riley Leonard is going to run the ball now. There is no reason not to anymore. They had been saving him midway through the season. They realized the toll on him was getting too great. I was surprised he didn't run more against IU, but they got up early. I think in key situations, you'll see a lot of Riley Leonard running today.
All right. So what is your biggest concern? Tim O'Malley of Irish Illustrated with us on the Buyers Right Hotline with what Georgia is going to have on the field today. Individual player, position group, part of the scheme. What do you think Notre Dame's biggest issue will be with what Georgia has out there this afternoon?
Actually, I'm kind of intrigued at the defensive line for Georgia because I know it's not the typical line we see. I guess if you're a Notre Dame fan and you watched them play twice and that was Texas, you think it absolutely is the typical line that you see. But I know that's not been the norm. I mean, Brinson against the interior because Rocco Spindler, Notre Dame's right guard, he's going to be playing with an injured ankle. It's not just a twisted ankle. It's an injured ankle. He missed the second half against IU. You can see he's a little slow. I know he's going to get some help pregame. That's a tough matchup for Notre Dame's interior because that whole interior has changed. It's completely different from what it was to start the season. These injuries happened in September for most of the guys, and they've adjusted since. But it's not necessarily their best interior players there. And then, of course, Williams on the edge against the true freshman Anthony Knapp, who he's done yeoman's work this year, man. He was early enrollee that wasn't even supposed to be in the 2 deep, and he started every game at left tackle. But that's a tough matchup. And if Georgia wins that matchup against Notre Dame's offensive line, because I think the Irish offensive line is very good. I think it deserved semifinal status for the Joe Moore Award, but I don't think it is one of those great Notre Dame lines because they're just very young, where they're all veterans. I think that's an interesting game within the game that Notre Dame's offensive line has to be as good as Georgia's defensive line because I think if either team is in 3rd and 8 all the time, that's a problem, but I know that could be a problem for Notre Dame with a little bit lack of explosiveness outside.
Absolutely. Well, Tim, we appreciate the time today. Great stuff as always. Have you picked this game? Which way do you think it goes ultimately?
Yeah, it was. I think both teams are getting peeled off the turf at the end of them. If I'm picking this game, I'm picking the under. I think these teams are going to be hitting each other. It's down to the final minutes, and I do think Notre Dame has a sense of belief they don't normally have in these games. And on my coin flip, I went with the Irish in a 2-point win. The really interesting thing there is this could have been a matchup of great kickers, but Notre Dame's kicker, Mitch Jeter, the South Carolina transfer, he got injured mid-season, and he finally got it right against IU, hitting a 49-yard field goal. Now he missed later, but it could be a big deal because Georgia's pretty automatic in the kicking game. And Notre Dame at one point when Jeter got hurt, and this includes him trying to kick injured, was 3 of 11 on field goals. I mean, that's 1950s field goal kicking. They were truly poor. So if it comes down to it, it's going to have to be the guy they used to call Money Mitch that was 23 of 25 for South Carolina. See if he has that back.
Well, Tim, we appreciate the time today. Enjoy it. We'll see you over at the Dome, and I appreciate you giving us a little Notre Dame update this morning.
Hey, thanks a lot, Cole. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Tim O'Malley, Irish Illustrated, joining us on the Buyers Right Hotline, just giving us some thoughts on how Notre Dame handled a little extra time off, their preparation for this game, and how this matchup might look. I think it's going to be a good one. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. When you think about the physicality that both teams are going to show up with, what they want to prove, and just how they play, going to be a good one today in the Caesars Superdome. All right, we've got a lot to wrap up, a lot to finish up here on the show. We'll get to some of your feedback. You want to get another call in before we get out of here, 800-239-9569. Tweet in at Mac and Cube. We can do that all right after this on Jocks 94.5. All right, 9:44, Thursday, January 2nd, right here on Jocks 94.5, as we're going to get you set for some college football today. Of course, Notre Dame, Georgia. I think it's going to be a fantastic matchup. I'm interested to see Gunnar Stockton as the guy starting a game out, how Bobo maybe alters the plan just a little bit more so for his mobility. And that might not mean him running the football in a north and south manner. Could be more movement of the pocket, zone read with the ability to keep the football a little bit more. I think Georgia implements some of that. So how do the Notre Dame edge defenders manage it? And as you heard Tim O'Malley tell us, it's going to be a little bit of a lighter Notre Dame front with Heinisch and Cross, both under 290 pounds. Is that an area where Georgia can say, all right, we're going right at you? If Tate Ratledge is a little bit more healthy than he's been most of the year, that might mean a little bit more oomph. I mean, you're going 315 plus across the board for this Georgia offensive line. And Rodney Nabulsi, who said it earlier, I mean, listen, I saw him sitting in there the other day, walking past a couple of them. There's some behemoths up there for that Georgia offensive line. Now, as we know on this show, look how big doesn't always mean that you're just going to move the football. You're going to be able to get people going the opposite direction. There's a lot more that goes with it, opposite of that. But I think Georgia's going to try it. I think they want to see if they can do it. Don't know how long they necessarily bang their head against that wall, trying to be stubborn with it. I think if they're that, then they could get in trouble because you have to. I think if you're Mike Bobo in this game, you have to account for a couple of drops. You have to account for the timing to be off, the rhythm to be off with your quarterback a little bit. So I don't think you have a ton of time to necessarily just be stubborn with the run because there are going to be some mistakes in this offense. Your receivers lead the nation in drops. You have a first-time starting quarterback. It ain't just going to be smooth. It's not. So I think you can't go out there and just continue to try something that may not end up finding its way to work because you're going to get a couple of drives stalled in this game from mistakes. Quarterback not making the right read, quarterback throwing it away, quarterback taking a sack. Those are things that are going to take place, and you'll probably get a couple of drives. You'll get some third down drops, and that's going to get your offense off the field as well. And I think Notre Dame wants to possess the football. I think they want to try to wear this Georgia defense down if at all possible. But I do think you'll see more shot plays. I think Mike Denbrock knows they have to pick their spots and push the football down the field. They're not going to be able to just grind out this Georgia defense. They can find some success there. And as I mentioned, off tackle is where I think Notre Dame can find some of that success. I think they're going to misplay it. Chaz Chambliss, Mykel Williams, those Georgia edge defenders will misplay the edges at times. Can you take advantage of that? Some of that is just, do you have the right call against the right play and how they're playing it and how they operate on that individual play and what the effort's going to look like on that play. But I think Notre Dame can find some out there. I think this game comes down to the intermediate passing game. Can Gunnar Stockton complete the hitch on 2nd and 5? Can Gunnar Stockton complete the out route on 2nd and 6? Can he get in 2nd and 3rd and manageables consistently throughout the course of this game? And can he do it against press man? Can he do it against man-to-man coverage that has been really good for Notre Dame this year? And then on the flip side of that, with Riley Leonard, you'll get a couple quarterback runs. Jeremiah Love's going to get his yards. You might take a shot play or two, but where the game's going to be won is, can he hit his tight ends over the middle of the field? Does he find his backs out of the backfield? Can he give you some of the intermediate throws? Does he hit a slant 2 or 3 times in this game to pick up first down yardage? That, I think, is the difference in the game. The intermediate passing game and who can manage that best, and then probably just turnovers too. I mean, if Riley Leonard's getting pressured and Jalen Walker's getting the ball out or Mykel Williams is getting the ball out, I mean, that's not something I think Notre Dame can really overcome in this game. And similar with Georgia. I mean, Gunnar Stockton throws a pick early. He puts the ball on the ground early. All of a sudden, I don't think that Georgia is necessarily built to be able to come back and play that kind of football with how Notre Dame might be able to possess the ball specifically. So I think it's going to be a fun matchup. I think there are a lot of aspects of it to look at and say, that's going to be interesting. It's going to be cool to watch. Tonight, 7 o'clock on ESPN, you'll get Duke and Ole Miss. Now, Duke obviously not going to have Malik Murphy in this game, so that changes the dynamic some. Jackson Dart is going to go for Ole Miss. I know there are multiple players out there that decided not to give it a go for Ole Miss, but I think they're going to have enough of that core offense back that Duke's not going to be able to have answers for it consistently throughout this game. So I'm going to be somebody who thinks Ole Miss is going to win. I don't know if they cover the 17.5. That feels like a massive number for me in a bowl game because think about how many of these bowl games have been tight, how many of these bowl games have been competitive. And I mean, this has been, I can't tell you the last bowl season I thought was this entertaining, top to bottom. Competitive games, overtimes, big players making big plays. It's been awesome. But this is one where I feel like Duke just appears to be outmatched. And then specifically with having to make a quarterback change and what's going to be a little bit different defensively, just don't know if they're going to be able to run with Ole Miss. But listen, does Ole Miss come out with their mind right? I mean, we've talked about this team the entire season of when they face real adversity, when their back's legitimately against the wall, what's it going to be like for that team? And now you get one where they're going to be sitting there heading into this Gator Bowl thinking they should have been in the playoff, probably feeling a little bit more hurt by how some other teams have performed in the playoff. Are they going to be feeling sorry for themselves? I mean, they're seeking to win 10 straight in consecutive seasons for just the second time in program history. And there's definitely some things to play for. Jackson Dart, I know, wants to go out a winner. I think all the reps he can put on tape of him doing different things to help a team win are going to help his draft status. And, listen, it's Duke's sitting there with 9 wins too. You don't think they want 10 wins? I mean, 10 games in a season for the second time in program history if they can pull it off. They won 10 games in 2013 over David Cutcliffe. So there are some big pinnacles and big goals to be reached for this Duke football team as well, but it's just a matter of, I think, who's at full strength and who wants it and who's put the prep in, because you have a ton of distractions in bowl games. There's all these activities. There's all these people around you. Certain guys thinking about the draft. Certain guys thinking about where they're going to go, if they're going to stay. It's just a lot right now. And you don't know specifically at a game like that one who has put the most into it and who mentally and emotionally is going to be ready. So you like one side of that Ole Miss Duke game? Do you feel 17.5 points comfortable for Ole Miss in that one?
In theory, yes. If Ole Miss shows up and plays the way that they should, that they play up to their talent, then yeah, they absolutely should, especially given what Duke is going to be missing. But I don't know. I have the feeling in this one, this feels a lot like the Florida game. Not that they're going to go in and lose, just I don't know. This feels like the spot that Ole Miss would just lay an egg, and it'll probably be a competitive game, but 17.5, I don't trust Ole Miss right now to do that.
Yeah, it's I just don't feel like mentally that team is going to be that dialed in. Now, we could have said the same thing. It's a little bit of a bigger stage, still not the playoffs, but last year showed up against a really good Penn State team. Look what they're doing in the playoffs this year and handed it to them. So, if they can get that kind of an effort, it could be a 17.5 point win. I'm interested to see what Duke has offensively that they put out against Ole Miss. Henry Beelan, the fourth, expected to make his second career start at quarterback after Malik Murphy transferring out.
Sounds like a Duke quarterback.
Or should I say Beelan the fourth?
Hey,
he's one for one this year. So, 19 to 33, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception in 8 career games at Duke. And as we all know, Darian Mensah from Tulane will be coming in next. I did receive confirmation this week in New Orleans that deal was not quite 4. It was a little bit more like 3.4, but still a pretty significant deal for, I don't know if it's a quarterback that I look at coming into Duke next year that's going to be an automatic, yes, check all the boxes for you. I think he's got good wheels. I think he's got a good arm, but I just don't think he's super dynamic. But that's the guy they wanted. They targeted him. They got him, and we'll see if they can make that work. Back to this Notre Dame-Georgia game today. Are you leaning one way or the other? Do you feel confident in a pick for this Georgia-Notre Dame today, John?
I felt all along that Georgia got the game. I don't think this delay will change that. But after hearing what O'Malley had to say and kind of sitting back, I think it's going to be more competitive than I was expecting. I wasn't expecting like an Oregon-Ohio State kind of a lopsided thing, but I really expected more, or I'm expecting more of a, or was expecting more of a Texas-Arizona State in the first half. I think we're going to get Texas-Arizona State in the second half all throughout the game.
I just think it's going to be competitive. I think both teams understand that there are parts of their teams that are going to have to be, they're going to need some reinforcements, so to speak. Quarterback line for Notre Dame. And to what extent other two teams try to attack those weaknesses, and then how weak are they? I don't feel confident that the Notre Dame receivers can just go get yards against this Georgia defense. I feel pretty good about the Notre Dame offensive line being able to hold up against Georgia's front. Now, if that's 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, 16 times in the game, I'm not going to feel great about that, because I asked Jalen Walker the other day at Media Day, I said, what position do you play? And he just kind of laughed. And he was like, why should we label it? Why should I just be an off-the-ball linebacker or inside linebacker, outside linebacker, edge defender? He's like, I like to do it all, man. So, he's the Swiss Army knife on that defense. They can line him up everywhere. He can do everything. And there's not usually a lot of answers that people have to getting him blocked. And could he be the guy that is either out there on the edge when Riley Leonard is working a zone read, or when they're trying to throw a screen, or when they're trying to run quarterback run off tackle, and he's helping make plays, and he's a problem out there. He's a force on the edge that could negate a lot of what that team wants to do. And then how does Georgia handle the tight ends at Notre Dame too? From a coverage perspective, they can get open, good route runners, enough physicality to be able to hang in there. And do you go nickel? Do you trust your linebacker, Smile Munden and company, to be able to manage those guys? I think these are all just matchups that are going to be interesting to watch. They're going to help determine who wins this football game. But we are going to know our second matchup in the semifinals after today. Georgia and Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl, 3 o'clock on ESPN. The game's been moved. It's a weird start time. A lot of people going back to work today. I'll be on the radio call for it, and you'll be able to listen to it there with Tom Hart, Jordan Rogers. GMAC obviously going to be calling the television portion of it. It's 12-1 Notre Dame, a 1-point favorite against 11-2 Georgia coming up today in the Sugar Bowl. We will be out of New Orleans, at least I will, after the game tonight, heading to Dallas. GMAC with you tomorrow. I believe he'll be back in Birmingham as he's going to drive home tonight. Appreciate Tim O'Malley joining us. Appreciate Roddy Nabulsi joining us. Appreciate Wimp Sanderson joining us. You can catch all those, jocksfm.com. Get your podcast there always for McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Whatever else you need. Go back and rewatch the show on YouTube if you need to. Search Jocks945. You can catch it there. And we will recap these 2 college football games coming up today on tomorrow and give you our thoughts on those 2 college football playoff semifinal games and begin to break those down. How to get a peek at, look who's going to be going at it for a national championship in the first ever 12-team playoff. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We're back tomorrow.